Hello and welcome to another reaction stream. Frenchman learns about Japan, basically, and the Shonen Jump sub-series we've been doing, watching the videos by the great channel Trentin Art, which documents, most of the manga and what happens in the magazine from its inception in 68 to I think so far 99 is the most recent one. Yeah, and yeah, we're getting closer to catching up. Actually, today might be, sorry about that, the penultimate stream before we catch up. So I think today we'll watch 95, 6, maybe 7, and then next time maybe 88, 98, 99. And again, we're getting close to the year I was born, which is 98, so should be interesting. But yeah, I'm pretty hype. We're getting to the late 90s, well, the second half of the 90s, and there should be a lot of what I know, but as I always say, I'm less here for the one that I know and more for like the lesser known work that were alongside all the big one, right? I think that's what I'm interested in, because sure, I've heard about One Piece, Hunter, etc., right? I love them, but I've heard about them, so it's a bit less interesting to me than all the other stuff that this channel talks about that, you might not have heard about because it's not translated or something. I think that's the part of the history I really enjoy. But yeah, as always, link to the playlist with all the videos from Trentin Art in the description. Do check them out. It must take a lot of work to do these videos. Link to my Discord if you want to follow me, my stream account, Patreon, etc., etc. The classic links. Sorry, I'm adjusting my light. It's not a very sunny day here. Hopefully, it looks alright. But yeah, last time we finished on 94. Rurouni Kenshin started. That was a big one. There was a few other interesting manga for me, like some historical manga that I would love to read if it was translated eventually. One of them was by the author of Okuto Ken. He seems to have a lot more manga that seem pretty interesting to me. Like he seems to have more than just Okuto Ken. I think most people will just think of that for this author, but I think it's definitely an author I need to look more into, But yeah, I don't think there's too much more to say. Let's see what happens in the years. Let's do it. Let's do it. So, we're starting with 95, the fall of Shonen Jump. I guess they might have like a bit of a hard time for a couple of years finding some big hits again. But the fall of Shonen Jump sounds ultra dramatic, and let's see what he has to say about it.
Throughout its history, Weekly Shonen Jump has only followed a single trajectory, up. Years of aggressive serialization and paying
I guess it's money-wise, okay.
attention to what its readers want through surveys helped spawn countless world-famous manga that helped catapult Jump into being the manga magazine. Over the last year's worth of history videos I've made, we've been running through the magazine's golden age, a time of rapid and explosive growth thanks to hits like Dragon Ball, Fist of the North Star, City Hunter, and later Yu Yu Hakusho and Slam Dunk, plus many, many more.
The 80s was just insanely packed.
This would all come to a head though in 1995, with Jump reaching its peak in terms of circulation with this issue here, issue 3-4 of 1995, which I own a replica of, and it has this really nice cover where every manga is represented with these little felt dolls. This is the most printed issue of Jump there will ever be, as since then the circulation number of Jump has only decreased with time, as have most magazines.
But I actually wonder, again, obviously, the physical copies aren't doing well today, but a ton of people are reading Jump online these days. Like, there's apps, there's websites, right? So I wonder if the numbers today are actually better or worse or equal to, again, without physicals, right?
Dig too deeply into the idea of physical media falling out of favor though, as the focus of my videos here is on Jump specifically, and there are other reasons why we see a decline in circulation, readership, and sales post this issue. Chiefly among them are big series ending, Jump's moneymakers. Yu Yu Hakusho ended last year in 1994, and a decent chunk of Jump's bigger manga would come to an end this year, like Ninku, Bonbonzaka, and Tar-chan, and in the following years Jump would begin losing its other big series too, like Slam Dunk. But the most important manga to end would be this year.
And then obviously you could say that so far, part of the reason Jump has been so strong is that it got really lucky every time a massive series would end. it didn't take them too long to manage to start another one that would become a big hit, right? And I feel, well, I don't want to say only luck, right? It's obviously like editors and all that, the one that decide where to serialize, and then obviously, you know, the people who approve all of that. But it is in some way lucky that, again, they had such a run of like most of the time being able to replace with something of equal level, right?
With Dragon Ball. So now that the stage is set, let's explore Shonen Jump in the year 1995 and the beginning of Shonen Jump's Dark Age.
Dark Age. Cool.
To kick things off, let's talk Dragon Ball. It's been a...
Oh yeah, I guess as always we'll pass the part where it seems like this is the end of the original Dragon Ball, so I guess the end of Z. Because Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z are basically in the same... Like, they have different name for the TV anime, but I think it's basically the same in the manga. Yeah. But obviously Toriyama will come back many times for more Dragon Ball. Yeah. Okay.
Our first new manga of the year would be Hisoka Return.
Nothing to do with Hunter.
Lasting 58 chapters and 7 volumes by Ken Yagami, and what puzzles me is why Hisoka is returning when he wouldn't be in the magazine for a few more years. Oh whoops, that's the wrong Hisoka. Hisoka Returns follows this guy, Hashijima Hisoka, a teacher who is in love with his fellow teacher and prior student, Rito. One day he ends up proposing to her with an ammonite as she loves fossils, but in a wild turn of events, a child is drowning at the same time in a nearby river, so Hisoka jumps right in without a thought to save them, and Hisoka ends up dying. Hisoka Returns then sees Hisoka return, but in the body of the child he saved, Narukami Goro, due to a passing monk's Tibetan magic.
Alright.
I am first going to tell you a little bit about the country called Tibet.
While the setup is a little wild and relies on a lot of conveniences, initially the series explores a very fun dynamic as nobody can find out that Narukami is actually Hisoka or he'll die. He also wants to get closer to Rito, his prior love interest, but she only sees him as a student now and also the cause of her beloved's death. There's a lot of drama, and for a Jump series it feels very different. I can't quite point to much that has the same vibe or art style. Jump just doesn't have much drama series in general, so this stuck out to the people at the time, giving it a bit of a following. It also plays it surprisingly well for it being an older work that's tackling an adult in a child's body. Hisoka quickly attempts to quell a female student who falls in love with him, and it's made a point that the main romance isn't something perfectly acceptable. There's a lot of aspects to it that are quite novel too, like Hisoka being his own rival in love. The biggest obstacle to him is his dead self, which makes for an interesting dynamic with Rito. It also opts to actually explore the character of Narukami Goro, who Hisoka is inhabiting, and the aftermath of taking over his body and changing his life. Sadly, Hisoka Returns was subject to a lot of editorial meddling though, which Ken Yagami mentions in the afterword of Volume 1. This is always a subject that's mentioned in Shonen Jump circles, but often it lacks the evidence to back anything up, and it's how aggressive editors can be in their mandated changes. It's a swampy subject that I'd like to tackle at some point, because I think Shonen Jump and its editors could lead to a fascinating discussion on authorship and the creative versus capitalistic weight art takes on. But
it's definitely an interesting subject that I always wanted to look more into as well. You often hear like some big names who've complained about it, right? Tite Kubo of Bleach, Toriyama himself, I mean, he hated his editor, you know. And I think it's a mixed bag, right? Because there's a lot of artists who later down the line it might be proven that without an editor, like they do, you know, they go off the rail, right? And so they need someone like an editor to try to control their creative madness. You know, while some artists, they do a lot better without someone holding them back, right? But some, definitely, they need an editor that will say no to this, or you should do this. I mean, obviously, I remember, like, there's the anime and manga, Bakuman, which is about mangaka, and it's written by the authors of Death Note. and he talks about, you know, the industry and stuff like that. And some of the editor stuff is definitely shown in there as, like, you know, the positive, the negative, the conflict, and all that. I mean, it's an interesting thing, yeah. Yeah. People often like to say that manga is such an interesting medium because it's, you know, like this vision of one artist, but often you don't think about it, but the editor probably has a lot of influence, so it's not simply one artist.
In this case, I think we have an interesting example of a work that was pushed to change, which eventually ended with it losing its identity somewhat and floundering. There are some similarities to Yu Yu Hakusho here, especially initially with the out-of-body experiences, the mix of romance, supernatural, and drama elements. It seems the editors really wanted to latch onto this, and like Yu Yu Hakusho, wanted to push for battle elements to be established later on, which Hisoka Returns would go on to touch on, becoming a little bit more of a supernatural detective manga by its end. This change feels very wonky though, and I think it alienated readers who are fans of the low-stakes sci-fi drama, leading it to become cancelled. In Shonen Jump's insistence to find a new hit that could be the next big battle shonen, they may have forced something unique and well-loved to be something it wasn't, becoming their own worst enemies at a time when they really wanted new hit manga. If you'd like to read this,
don't they always want new hit manga?
One, and I'd recommend it since it's a different manga for Weekly Shonen Jump. A full official translation did exist as part of the now defunct Manga Reborn platform. I'm not sure it's available anywhere officially anymore, but this translation does exist somewhere on the internet if you want to do some digging. Jinai Ryu Jutsu Butsuden Majima-kun Sutobazu would last 140 chapters and 15 volumes by Makoto Niwano. Hey, no, that's the wrong Majima. Previously, Niwano's Bomber Girl bombed last year within Jump, only lasting one volume, but this time he would get a hit working on a martial arts battle series. It would follow the titular Majima, a practitioner of Jujutsu who is on a quest to become the world's strongest man in the footsteps.
That is kind of ahead of his time. I mean, 95. The world isn't that interested in Jujutsu yet. I mean, UFC started and, you know, Ois Gracie kind of showed how strong it is, but yeah, kind of ahead of his time for manga.
Of his father. He goes on to attend high school while garnering rivals who would wield various martial arts, with the series eventually taking on MMA. Rivals who would wield various martial arts, with the series eventually taking on MMA. As per usual, for a Niwano series, it would have plenty of comedy and a sleaze factor with some more risque jokes. His big-eyed, energetic art style is on full display here too, which is something I find very appealing. Sadly, it's only had 2 chapters translated into English, despite its length and level of success. It would end with Majima and his friends / rivals going on to challenge the underworld, which would be explored in the manga's sequel, Jinai Ryujutsu Ruroden Majima Bazaru, which lasted for 142 chapters and 21 volumes, running from 2009 to 2021, shifting its demographic and magazine to seinen so it could explore more adult topics. It would also receive 2 drama CDs in 1998, as well as a mobile game called Strongest X Fierce Battle Majima-kun Will Be Defeated in the 2010s that seems to be long gone by now.
Yeah.
While it's not well known to most Jump fans, it acted as a solid hit for Jump's.
I'm actually interested. I mean, I guess it's not translated, so I'll have to wait, but I've always been a massive fan of martial art manga and delinquent manga, you know, which often have some overlap. And some years ago, I got really obsessed to the point where I was reading so many of them that I could find that were translated. Obviously never come upon this one because I guess it wasn't. But yeah, I'll make a mental note and, you know, one day hopefully it'll get a translation. I mean,
Dark Age, and if there's a silver lining to this period, it's that plenty of authors got a chance to stand out or get longer serializations like Niwano. Genki Yade or I'm Fine would be something different for Jump, being written by Ryuji Sugihara, an old veteran of the magazine, with art by Junji Yamamoto, with it being based on accounts of real-world bullying from Mamoru Tsuchiya's daughter. It would be a short-term serial lasting 10 chapters and 1 volume, and would cover the subject of bullying within schools, as it was.
I really like manga that try to really take on actual real-life stories. Something like this I was thinking is Yowamari Sensei, I think it's called. It's like an autobiographical manga from a former teacher who became some kind of like night teacher warden kind of guy who would go around the street of Japan trying to help like youth getting into various things from, like drugs, sex work, stuff like that, and just try to help with them. And it's a very bleak manga, but also kind of beautiful.
It was becoming a heightened issue at the time due to multiple suicides in various schools across Japan. To accompany this, Shonen Jump would also run an extra column alongside this manga, which even ran for multiple months after it ended, called Jay's Corner, that would further discuss bullying in a serious way. The core plot would follow a girl called Sachiko who gets bullied after a sea change. It has a focus on how bullying is a systematic issue and spreads beyond the individuals involved, with no classmates or teachers helping Sachiko. I have heard some criticisms that it had approached it a little half-heartedly in the end, with it wrapping up a bit too quickly, without fully criticizing the teachers involved, for instance, though for the most part people do describe it as something true to life and something important for the time it was serialized.
I mean, I was thinking you don't really need it, because when you think about it, in so many shonen series, you have often a weak, I mean, maybe not at this time, it's maybe a bit later down the line, but you have a weak main character that's often bullied, and you often have the lesson of him getting stronger to stand up for himself and do what's right, or protecting other people that are bullied or something. So like, if I'm a young boy reading Shonen Jump at that time, I definitely have gotten the lesson that bullying bad, I feel like.
Takeke Ryusei by Tetsuo Hara would last 26 chapters and 3 volumes, being his final manga in Jump after over a decade of filling the manga with his gorgeous artwork and manly men. And he would go out with a bang by trying to remake or retry Shonen Jump's initial big hit, Otoko Ipiki Gaki Daisho, with a modern coat of paint. This isn't the first time this has even been attempted, with Otokozaka by Masumi Kurumada debuting in the magazine in 1984, with it getting cancelled, which would be the same fate that would befall Takeki Ryusei. It's a work that follows its inspirations closely. A gang leader, in this case a Usosuku motorcycle gang leader, manages to gather significant forces, and over time his influence grows as he comes into contact with all sorts of people. Ryusei starts out by fighting Yakuza before being introduced to Joga Tsurugi, a man amongst men with the dream to establish some sort of republic within Hong Kong made by
That's a Majima type tattoo.
Japanese people for those who don't fit into the stifling mainland. There's a focus on uniting outsiders and building something greater than yourself, something Otoko Ipiki ended up doing too, though at a much slower pace. I find it really interesting that an attempt to homage this classic Jump work was made, but as I mentioned with Otokozaka, it was attempted before and failed. It's been decades at this point since the original was serialized, and manga has changed considerably. The types of characters and stories that were once told had fallen out of fashion, and no amount of explosions, martial arts, or Ryusei saving a baby whale, as cool and weird as that is, was ever going to save this one, I think. It's weirdly fitting that Tetsuo Hara, one of the last Golden Age veterans from the 80s, would end his run with something incredibly archaic and historically intertwined with Jump, since it succinctly covers that Jump itself has changed a lot since its founding. While this isn't the best manga ever, especially by Tetsuo Hara standards, it might be worth checking out if you're a fan of Jump history. It's a weird piece that pays homage to the past and is emblematic of the change Jump had undergone and would continue to undergo. Even at a time when Jump needed new hits, as sales and circulation began to dip, Takeke Ryusei demonstrated that going back wasn't really an option. If Jump wanted to get out of this dark age, it would have to move forward. In the last video, I remarked that there was a lot of police or detective manga, but I neglected to bring up the state of Shonen Jump's rivals at the time. I try to keep things contained to just the magazine so I don't go too crazy, but in this instance, I have to bring up Detective Conan or Case Closed, which exploded into the scene last
Actually, I think it started like a couple years before.
year in Weekly Shonen Sunday. Couple this with Shonen Magazine having the Kindaichi Case Files, which,
as you guys know, now for over a year on my old channel, and this one I've been catching up to Conan. We've just reached 700 episodes. Still a lot to go, yeah. Kindaichi is also something I've heard. but I haven't checked out. Maybe eventually.
Was still leaving a prosperous run, Jump was the only magazine out of these 3 big shonen magazines without its finger in the detective mystery pie. This makes the prior police focus of last year make a bit more sense, since the manga world and Japan in general were likely going through a big detective phase. Culturally, it's not something I'm super aware of, though I know that these 2 manga existed at the time, plus things like Twin Peaks and Columbo were ever popular, as was detective stuff in general, so I can make an educated guess as to why Jump might be trying to shift to this genre at this time. A mystery detective manga could be something new for them that might help stabilize the magazine's declining state. So what was 1995's
I mean, Conan is gonna become one of the biggest, so...
answer to all of this when many detective or police series had failed before? Puppets. Puppet Master Sakon, or Karakuri Zoshi Ayatsuri Sakon, will last 32 chapters in 4 volumes by Masaru Miyazaki and Takeshi Obata. A face we haven't seen in a while, but would pop up a lot more in the coming years. The plot sees Sakon Tachibana, the grandson of a great bunraku master, a form of theatrical puppetry, travel around Japan solving various murders. He is always accompanied by his puppet Ukon, who originates all the way back to the beginning of the Meiji era and is over 100 years old. Generally, Sakon is a very shy and kind-hearted individual, but when involved in a case, he begins to snap and gets more serious, which reminds me of a certain boy in Pharaoh, which we'll touch on in the next episode of this series. In this case, it's a more psychological experience though, as from what I can tell, it's all Sakon. He's just fragmenting his mind and personality so he can take on murder cases. And should this work have lasted longer, I would have loved to see that explored more. I also want to comment on Ayatsuri Sakon's unique tone and vibe within Jump. It's eerie. This is due to it being a murder mystery, but Obata's art really helps sell the tension and horror aspects of the series. In the initial first case or chapter, some of the artwork, notably the bodies, is really intense and even reminds me of Suehiro Maruo's work, someone far removed from the realm of Weekly Shonen Jump. Corpses and killers feel like a tangible threat here, and not just some battle shonen enemy or crook. There's a dark humanity to them, and for the mystery genre, this is something I particularly like. Things aren't as jovial or positive as some of the other mystery manga I've read, like Detective Conan. There's a dreariness to Ayatsuri Sakon, though with the inclusion of the main character and the puppetry elements, a certain beauty can be extracted.
I mean, not that I've read a lot of detective manga or anything, but I feel like when they're long like this, there's just no way to make things actually feel very, you know, like, at least when I watch someone Conan, right, that like, it's hard to ever feel like disturbed or worried about things. It's always new, unimportant character that will die, and you repeat that so many times that at some point, yeah, like, you know, you can't really do anything that will feel like that much more brutal. I think detective stories that really work is the one that are short. Like I think of, you know, movies or like short TV shows where brutal stuff happen, but again, there's not like ton of repetition and desensitization within the series itself. You could say some people get desensitized overall to a medium because if you watch enough detective stories, you know, the next work will feel the same. I think for me it's really like, yeah, with something like Conan, you know, it never feels brutal anymore. What early on, at time it could feel like it. But yeah.
From it too. Jump seldom has proper horror series, and detective mystery hits are borderline non-existent, so this feels quite unique as part of its roster. It's dark and suitable for this lull in the magazine's history. Throughout its run, it managed to tackle about 7 cases, I think, if we include the original one-shot that debuted in one of Jump's seasonal magazines, with just 4 of these being translated into English, 19 of the 32 or 33 chapters. Thankfully, there is an alternative way to view Sakon, as while it was seemingly cancelled, it did eventually receive an anime adaptation in 1999, which you can find with English subtitles. It possesses a total of 26 episodes that changes some elements, but post its 18th episode it features completely original content, so it's an expansion to the manga. Why this was even released, as this is a cancelled work, is likely due to the popularity of Takeshi Obata as an artist at the time. Hikaru no Go would be publishing by then, which was very popular, so that would be my best guess as to why. TMS, the production company behind it, were also reaping in the success of doing the Detective Conan anime, so things have kind of come full circle here too.
Yeah.
I would recommend checking out both versions of Sakon. While the manga isn't complete, due to its structure, nothing is left incomplete on a case basis, so it ends in a satisfying enough way, plus it has some brilliant artwork. The anime is also a very interesting case. I think the atmosphere it builds, the way its voice cast
might
makes
check out the
music,
anime, yeah.
and the way it overall looks is in this distinct period of the late 90s to early 2000s, which
Man, I love Kino no Tabi. I've watched the classic anime and the more recent one. I think they're both good in their own way. I'll be surprised if we ever get more adaptations, so I'll have to read the manga eventually.
Especially adore. There's a beauty and melancholy to it which I associate with the time. It also fits Ayatsuri Sakon's eerie puppet-filled murder mystery concept very well. Ryudo no Shigu by Takeshi Noguchi would last 13 chapters in 2 volumes, following Sig, a ninja who enters the fictional Tsukushima territory, where the main villain named Hyakimaru has caused it to become a lawless land of ninja. It looks like a fairly run-of-the-mill battle shonen with different factions of ninja and with a focus on martial arts, with some drawing comparisons to Fist of the North Star, as Sig uses a technique called the Invincible Fist of Assassination to remove bones from his enemies, leading them to become unable to fight back. This concept, as well as some of the artwork.
What is it in Tsukihime? The mystic eyes of death perception that lets you cut anything.
Definitely has me intrigued, as Noguchi has this style that I feel blends more modern trappings at the time with older design sensibilities. The eyes of his characters also really stand out to me too. Sadly, Ryudo no Shigu was not meant to be and was quickly cancelled. For something a bit different next, 1995 saw more than a few one-shots take center stage on covers. 2 of these were from Tsukasa Hojo, Shonen Tachi no Itanatsu, Melody of Jenny, and Soku no Hate Shonen Tachi no Senjo. Both are related to World War II, due to it being the 50th anniversary at the time, with Shonen Tachi being about a pilot assigned to a kamikaze division, and Melody of Jenny being about a group of children who escape a war camp, trying to return to Tokyo, who get help from a foreign flutist. Finally, there's also American Dream, set in 1935, that wasn't on the cover of Jump, that sees a Japanese baseball player befriend an American player, but due to strained foreign relations, things don't really work out. While I haven't read these works, there's certainly a melancholy about them due to their subject, but also because these would be the last thing Tsukasa Hojo would work on within Jump. Perhaps he wanted to do more
Another legend living.
mature stories, and Jump were weighing on whether they would do well, so they attempted to try something different here, though Hojo would move on and never return.
I mean, I guess it's a good thing, right? Like, for some of those authors, like, it's maybe not what they wanted to leave Jump, but for some of them, potentially, yeah, I mean, you know, in some other magazines, they'll have a lot more freedom on what they can do, because no matter what, Jump is still, like, very, how would you describe it? Like, it's a very, you know, rigid kind of a magazine, right? Like, so with some other magazine, like, you probably have a lot more freedom, yeah.
We would also get Shaquille O'Neal Monogatari by Akihiko Nishio and Kenji Mitsuyoshi, obviously a one-shot or two-shot actually, about the basketballer, which is shown off in this cool double feature cover alongside Slam Dunk. Within the next year, the two would also go on to publish a similar two-shot on Reggie Miller in 1996 as well. Basketball wasn't the only sport Jump wanted to latch onto though, as in 1995 we would also see footballer Roberto Baggio also get a one-shot with Forza Roberto Baggio Monogatari, which would make sense as apparently he would appear in the anime of Captain Tsubasa, and overall was popular within the country, endorsing a bunch of Japanese football games. Finally, another one-shot that managed to get a cover was Ballet Numon Orega Ballet or Hajimeta Wak by Ta-chan creator Masaya Tokuhiro, who we'll discuss a new series by later on
And a
in this
goofy
video.
manga.
It's interesting to see one-shots get such a focus this year. A good chunk are based on current events or popular things
this
at the
guy?
time, so perhaps Jump thought that trying new things outside of manga externally might be a good way to increase their reach or popularity.
Le coup de Nashi Blues.
Mario.
Shadow Lady by Masakazu Katsura would last 23 chapters in 3 volumes and would see regular gal Aimi don her
Oh, it's the other video girl eye. You can tell right away. I love his art.
magic eyeshadow, which transforms her into the infamous master thief Shadow Lady. Shadow Lady is a very fun manga, mixing a classic episodic thief-type narrative, think Cat's Eye or Lupin, with Katsura's penchant for drawing pretty girls. It has plenty of fun action, tantalizing ecchi scenes, multiple outfit swaps for its main character, and even a pretty cute romance line with the main character Aimi is her own biggest rival as she tries to win over this detective who's in love with Shadow Lady. I really feel that Katsura embraced the fun and zany aspects of his stories here, getting rid of most of the drama in his prior works like Video Girl I or DNA Squared, and it works really well. This is going to be an oxymoron, but it's good quality pulp. It's skeezy, there's not a ton of depth, but the concept of a shy girl donning makeup to become a badass thief who messes around with the police is a lot of fun, and it looks amazing. Almost every time I brought up a manga by Katsura, I praised his artwork. It's always very clean, packed with detail, and is expressive. His character designs are especially appealing in this work too. Aimi is positively adorable in the way she's depicted. I love her little sidekick Demo as well.
I want to read his work
Shadow
just for
Lady
the art.
varieties, which are spawned from different colors of eyeshadow, are very well drawn. Later on, the story does shift a bit and introduces some demons that Shadow Lady needs to face down, and damn, we got fan service on multiple ends of the spectrum, which I really love to see. Sadly, it seems Jump's readership weren't on board at the time, which is a massive shame as I'd gladly read a few hundred chapters of this. Perhaps others overseas think this too, as this is an extremely odd case where Shadow Lady not only has an English release, but one in the form of single-issue American comics, published by Dark Horse. This splits the series up into a few arcs, but contains the entirety of the Shonen Jump run, plus a one-shot. It is flipped though, which takes a while to get used to. Still, I'm glad you can actually read it and potentially own this work in English, as I had such a fun time with it. Also to note, Shadow Lady originated in 1992, where Katsura had a short serial in V-Jump in full color that seemed to really hone in on the American comic influence. So potentially this was some kind of catalyst to getting that Dark Horse English release. Perhaps because of all of this, it's also got a decent sized cult following too. I've run into plenty of people who are aware of Shadow Lady or have expressed their love of it, and there's even this amazingly cool looking figure of Shadow Lady in Demo, which I would totally be tempted to buy if I had any disposable income of any kind.
Ooh,
what's this? A not so subtle reminder that I have a Patreon, and if you'd like to support these videos, you can by throwing money at me. I probably won't buy this Shadow Lady figurine, by the way, because it's way too expensive, but I'll be able to actually eat and live and keep making these videos, so thank you for your support. Mortal Commando Guy would last 12 chapters in 2 volumes by Shinichi Sakamoto.
Just looking at the cover, that looks like it's from the 80s.
The author of works such as Innocent, The Climber, and Diaz.
Really? I guess it's another like Araki, right? Starting with like the buffest, craziest looking dudes to going to work like this with like often more effeminate and ultra realistic looking car design. That's something. I've read Innocent and Innocent Rouge, which I really like. Marie Antoinette. Well, not Marie Antoinette. Sanson, I think is her name. Sanson. I forget the name of the main character, yeah.
CL Midnight Children. It's really cool to see such an established name in the seinen manga sphere who started in Jump.
Right.
This work would follow the titular Mortal Commando Guy or Guy Honjo.
I love seeing like the evolution of some artists. It's crazy. Araki is a good example, but this too, seriously. It's amazing, yeah.
A freelance journalist who, while working on covering the drug trade in South America, sees their benefactor get kidnapped by the Blythe cartel. To rescue her and possibly take revenge, he then trains under the US Special Forces, becoming a near superhuman capable of wiping out whatever the cartels can throw at him. The level of brutality, Western sensibilities, and action didn't seem to mesh with what people were expecting from Jump at the time, so it ended quickly with Sakamoto finding success in Shonen magazines later on in his career. Hoshiwo Sugimono, or Inheritor of the Planet, would last 9 chapters and 1 volume by Takunobu Toda, being a full-on sci-fi series that sees humanity scattered across various planets where most are slaves to other alien races. The story would follow Baradat Knives, a bounty hunter known for massacring all the people on his home planet, looking for a way for humanity to evolve and prosper so they don't die out for good. The series would feature plenty of different alien races and would be partly episodic, seeing Knives help out people as he hops from place to place, but some core plot elements are introduced, like Jay, a mad scientist type character who has wholly rejected his humanity and has evolved with special cells which Knives is searching for. The art is pretty interesting, having unique looking characters that I feel evoke Western comics a bit. Knives also fights with something called a spiral knife, which looks super cool and seems to almost function like some kind of flying psychic knife. Even though this work was cancelled very quickly, it has a sort of cult following, and plenty of people online seem to remember it fondly for being a more mature and different manga from this period of Jump. Following this, we'd get another alien-focused sci-fi series by none other than Yoshihiro Togashi.
And I did not realize it was Togashi, yeah. There's also an anime, I believe.
Returning after Yu Yu Hakusho, running for 16 chapters in 3 volumes, having a mostly monthly serialization within the magazine, which would stretch its run to 1997. Level E can be described as a sci-fi horror black comedy hybrid. Sci-fi and horror works weren't super common in Jump, but black comedy is a rarity since that's usually something solely targeted at older audiences. Level E isn't solely filled with that type of comedy, and certain elements are much more silly in comparison, but there is a darkness to Level E which was present in later Yu Yu Hakusho as well as throughout his future work with Hunter x Hunter. Here it's put on a pedestal though, which makes the work stand out a lot, especially when you pair it with the variety of weird subjects and topics the manga covers. Some are just popular concepts that Togashi as well as Japan at the time would have been interested in, like baseball, Super Sentai or Tokusatsu shows, and of course Dragon Quest. But mix in all of this with storylines that touch on the transgender experience, cannibalism, terrorism, and of course aliens as well.
Alright.
At its core, Level E follows Prince Baka El Dogra, an alien from another planet who's touched down on Earth and causes all sorts of...
That sounds pretty crazy. It makes me wonder, like, what if he had never started Hunter x Hunter after this and went in Shonen magazine and, you know, just did short stories, right? Or shorter manga, not short stories. What kind of stuff he would have done? Interesting.
Chaos with his antics. The Earth in Level E has had visitations from countless aliens, with many living on the planet with humans unaware of their existence. It plays around with this idea, with the story being split into several different arcs that touch on some of the aforementioned topics, usually mixing a serious and quite suspenseful or horrific narrative with zany or dark jokes to interesting effect. It's almost purposefully confrontational and weird. It feels made to push boundaries. The irregular serialization and genres it's been placed in is one thing. Togashi also worked on this solo with no assistance either, so it's solely his brainchild. But then you have its main protagonist, and love him or hate him for it, but he's a narcissistic bastard that isn't traditionally likable at all. Level E isn't meant to be your traditional Jump hit, and
I wish there was more like that. I always say it, but I want more work when the main character isn't... Not that he isn't a good guy, but he isn't even likable. It can be interesting. I mean, obviously, like, it's way harder to do, and to do right, because you need him to be not likable, but still interesting enough that you want to see where the story goes. So I guess it's like pretty complicated to do.
Togashi has said as much, as in a 2017 interview during Shonen Jump's 50th anniversary. He mentions that Level E was meant to be a work that wasn't supposed to get any reader votes, and that it wasn't meant to be a big feature within the magazine. I think it's kind of amazing how something so personal and indulgent was serialized within Jump. There's a ton of things you'd never see in another series other than one Togashi himself would make. Perhaps because of the state of the magazine at the time, Level E was considered. With big losses like Dragon Ball and the prior Yu Yu Hakusho, getting Togashi back no matter what was bound to make some kind of waves for them, and I guess that was their logic. And while it wouldn't save the magazine in any way, what Level E did do was give Togashi time to work on something on his own terms, which subsequently allowed him to build strength and ideas that would come to aid Jump with a future hit a few years down the line. Level E would also get an anime adaptation all the way in 2011, several years after its conclusion, which is just as bizarre as the manga and worth watching if you're a fan of Togashi's work or want to see an alternate take on this beloved cult classic. For the purposes of this video, Level E is a fascinating and bizarre manga that fits perfectly into the crop of 1995 series that makes up Jump's dark age. Mizuno Tomodachi Kappa Man will last 35 chapters in 3 volumes by Masaya Tokihiro, being his follow-up to Jungle King Ta-chan. Similarly to his other works, this would be a comedic manga filled with all sorts of dick and balls type jokes. I seriously think Masaya Tokihiro has the highest ratio of dicks per chapter out of any mangaka within Jump, minus a lot of the child characters like Goku, who shows his junk off a lot at the beginning of Dragon Ball. Kappa Man follows Kawataro, a half-human, half-Kappa hybrid who goes to look for his mother after his Kappa father passes away. This injects some nice humanity into the story, which it balances well alongside the comedy and some action scenes. Kawataro is eventually joined by Mai, the daughter of a temple priest who has immaculate fashion sense and is one of the coolest characters that has ever graced the pages of Jump. Her height, long black hair and leather jacket feel very unique for a main heroine, and how she interacts with Kawataro is a lot of fun too. Expect plenty of slapstick, pun-based humor, poop and dick jokes, ecchi scenes, as well as tons of different yokai popping up. It's pretty interesting to read as it feels like a relic of years long past, and you really don't see this much nudity anymore in Jump. Despite its raunchiness though, Kappa Man is a really sweet story that manages to interweave themes of environmentalism, and it has a heartfelt set of relationships that help Kawataro grow as a person and accept his both human and Kappa sides. I love Masaya Tokihiro's art here too. He opted to let some scenes just play out for certain pages with no dialogue at all, and his art really speaks for itself. It's stylized, slightly weird, but very appealing. I especially love his expressions and the way each character's eyes just twinkle. If you'd like to read this one, you can, as it's been fully translated. Kaiosu Cambodia would last 9 chapters in 1 volume by Tono Kawara and would follow Karuma Karamoto, an antique dealer who runs a small shop who often gets into trouble. The work was episodic, with it focusing on different antiques in each installment, with there also being battle elements as the main character was proficient in martial arts, and various side characters would eventually join with different fighting styles too. Despite its very short run and simple premise, it seems to have a small cult following, with the author going on to make the King's Tailor series, which has been ongoing from 2003 and continues to be published to this day.
Never that. It's like, on one side it's like such an interesting concept, a long-running manga about suit tailoring, and yet at the same time I'm like, this sounds like the most boring thing ever, and yet I'd like to give it a try. Yeah. I like this ultra insanely specific manga that still managed to run for a long time, like The Drop of Gods was it, which is about wine specifically. I just like ultra specific work.
The final new manga of the
Let's go.
year would then be Sexy Commando Gaiden Sugoi yo Masaru-san.
I've watched, there was an anime at the end of the 90s, I think. They were like only 10-minute episodes, I think, but I've watched it and I thought it was pretty funny. Like not crazy like Gintama novel or something, but I thought it was funny. And the best thing about it is that the opening is by a visual kei band called Penicillin, and I discovered the band thanks to that opening and became a big fan. They're like a very over-the-top visual kei band, but love their music.
Lasting 79 chapters and 7 volumes by Kyosuke Usuta. Sexy Commando is well regarded and loved from my understanding and can be considered a hit from the time despite its smaller length. As a comedy series, it's very varied in what it considers to be funny. Some things include random words being used or invented, singing, characters writing the word meat on each other's foreheads, and of course, referential and parody type jokes. Sexy Commander pretty much does a little bit of everything, with its namesake deriving from one of the main jokes, a faux fighting style developed or learned by the main character that involves taking your opponent off guard by doing weird things like unzipping your fly. While I didn't personally find it very funny, aside from a few jokes like the principal of the school joining the main character's club, it's very clear that people hold Sexy Commando very deep.
I think like many comedy manga, I think for me, they often work much better in anime because of the voice acting, the music, the timing. You know, I've never really like died laughing reading a manga, right? You know, I can find a joke funny, but at best I will smile or like chuckle in my head, you know what I mean? But with some anime, not many, but some, like Gintama is the biggest example, definitely. And I think again, like the added voice acting and animation is a lot.
Really. A part of this is because of how different and audacious the manga is, often being referred to as the origin of surreal gag manga, or something that deliberately tried to distance itself from what was considered funny at the time. On a broader level, I do think Sexy Commando captures the appeal of childish imagination. It's silly, usually depicting a bunch of kids goofing off and getting into wacky situations. So this youthful whimsy it exhibited could have been a draw for all sorts of people, young or old. It would also get an anime in 1998 after the manga had ended, which was comprised of 48 8-minute long episodes, proving its long-term popularity. Sadly, at the time of it ending, Usuta was a fairly new artist who wasn't at all ready for the strain of weekly serialization, with him saying that he ended the series because he couldn't take it anymore in a physical and mental way, as it was too demanding. Despite this though, he would continue to go on to make manga in the future and did end up making a small hit that helped Shonen Jump out throughout one of its bleaker periods. Now that we've covered all the new manga for this year, let's move on to the roster talk section where we'll quickly run through.
And I guess it's gonna recap JoJo as always. Okay. And I guess the Rooster talk as always. Rooster, yeah. Yeah, okay, so I guess that's about it for this one. I would say that, yeah, we can definitely tell that this is more of a dark age. A bunch of series ending, and like all the new ones that they talked about starting, some of them seem to have run for a while, but none of them are like what I'd call massive. And there was a ton of like literally just one volume manga. So things really, are not doing too great right now, which again is not that surprising. Again, as I said, I feel like they had some luck quite a bit from the beginning of the manga to this point, to kind of maintain for like 25 years almost, like a constant stream of like popular manga and then starting a new popular one pretty fast after one ends. So yeah, let's watch the next one, 96. I see you, Yu. Rest in peace to the author.
Last time on the history of Shonen Jump, we plunged into the beginning of its dark age. Bigger works began to end, and the newer manga on offer throughout 1995 wouldn't match the performance of the golden decade prior. The magazine would continue on declining in circulation, but by no means was Jump in a poor position or dying out for good, as 1996 would provide us with a few seeds which would help change its fate considerably. Still, for the dramatic effect, let us keep going through Shonen Jump's dark age and see what new series this year has in store for us.
It's time to
With almost perfect timing, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 5 Golden Wind.
More JoJo. Then I guess I didn't realize how I always had the impression that like he would take a break between parts, but man, does he not slow down, huh? Wait, over here.
Viewing early on in the year, we'd have a big hit, which is seldom discussed outside of Japan.
Never heard of this.
Half by Yuko Asami, which ran for 142 chapters and 17 volumes. Keeping Jump's tradition of having dog protagonists like Ginga, Wild Half is the story that focuses on a human and dog duo, Taketo Iwase and Salsa. Salsa isn't your normal dog though, he is a type of beast man with the power to transform into a hybrid form between human and animal. The series would use this to conduct battles, but primarily it would be a detective-focused series, with the titular Wild Half being Salsa's alias, which he uses to help people from the shadows in his dog form. Over the course of the series, more wild halves or beastmen get introduced, and the series would continue to juggle its battle, mystery, and slice-of-life elements, though unfortunately only 5 chapters are available to be read in English.
Oof.
Despite its popularity and cult status, the author Yuko Asami wouldn't have a very long career within Jump, becoming a doujinshi artist in the years since the series' conclusion. I bring this up because at least one major doujin of Wild Half has been created by them,
Not
Wild Half
surprised.
Kibaku no Hanashi, which seems to feature this pretty popular leopard character. Outside of this, Wild Half received 3 drama CDs throughout 1997 to 1998, and throughout 2014 to 2015, the stage play Wild Half Probability of Miracles was performed about 12 times. For whatever reason, I find
I'm always surprised by how many manga get stage play.
it really fascinating that older Jump properties often get musicals like this, like with Out to Zone a few videos ago. Like that stage play, we have some accounts from the actors we can look at, namely the actor Kohei Murakami, who played Hisafumi Iwase, the main character's brother. It seems to be very common for stage actors to have these little blogs where they gush about the plays they were a part of, especially after they conclude, and there's something very nice about that. I'm at least thankful we can get a glimpse of the behind the scenes of this, and we have some more too, as the stage play has its own YouTube channel which has videos of a few actors introducing themselves and their roles. I'll link Kohei Murakami's blog and this channel in the description if you're...
I still actually haven't ever watched a stage play for anything. I got tempted once by the Yakuza one, but I've only seen clips, yeah. I don't know if I would really enjoy stage play of anime, manga, games, but I should give them a try eventually. Like, it's another like branch of otaku media and culture I haven't really touched on.
We're at all curious about the Wild Half stage play. Oni ga Kitarite would be a demon-focused battle manga that would last 13 chapters in 2 volumes by Gin Shinga. Following Raya Onibe, a feud member of the Onibe clan, the story would be set in the early Edo period and see him hunt down various evil demons who have gone astray. There was a focus on a few different clans of demons with relations to each other, and the final villain was the main character's father, but it was cancelled so quickly that not much of this was actually explored in the story, which was only heightened by its slower pace. As a side note, I believe this is the first assistant of Nobuhiro Watsuki to get their own series, although Oni ga Kitarite seemed to follow a similar formula to Rurouni Kenshin, which likely didn't help its chances in sticking around. Makuhari would last 82 chapters in 9 volumes by Yasuaki Kita, being another cult hit of the year and a gag manga which poked fun at the magazine through fourth wall breaking parody, much like the Me and Roboko of today or Gintama. Makuhari would primarily follow the dynamic duo of Tetsuhito Shioda and Shigeo Nara, 2 high schoolers and members of the school's baseball club, though no baseball is ever played within the manga. As mentioned, a large amount of jokes would be referential and parody real-world things, mainly Jump manga, mangaka, editors, and celebrities. These jokes would often be far more mean-spirited, I think, than what you might see in other Jump gag manga, and alongside this, Makuhari would put a big focus on raunchy or sexual humor. I can't speak for the entire series since it isn't translated, but the first 3 chapters didn't serve to be a very compelling introduction to me. Initially, there's some great jokes poking fun at Jump in a light way, it's referential and clever, but then it devolves into some pretty rough homophobic stuff, and chapter 2 sees the main characters get way too handsy with a girl. I just don't think it holds up very well and wasn't what I expected at all. Me throwing "it doesn't hold up" might elicit a no shit moment from you, but at least in this case I'm partly bringing it up because it's especially related to its time. Many jokes centered around things like making fun of other Jump manga we'll discuss this year, like psychological profiler Aoi Kusanagi, which did not run past 1996. Stay tuned if you want to learn more about that. Kita would parody this series.
There's quite a few things like that. I mean, Gintama is full of that. When I first watched the anime for Gintama, I watched it with a French fan sub, and you know, like many times per episode at the top they would have some context about some joke that was made or some reference, and yeah, it was both a really funny show because Gintama can have some comedy that's outside of reference, just funny for the sake of funny, right? But yeah, a lot of it was like kind of hard to follow. I think an even harder work, especially now that it's been like 20 years or something, is Sayonara Zetsubou Sensei, which I absolutely love, but a lot of its comedy is like literally just constant reference to, I think, event that happens at the time or something. And yeah, I mean, with that context, you know, it's kind of hard to really find it funny, you know. And even once you just read like a Wikipedia page for the context, it doesn't hit as hard, right? It's the kind of thing that would be funny if you actually know the thing in advance.
In turn, the creators of Aoi Kusanagi would feature a murder victim after Yasuaki Kita. Though through Jump author comments, it seems nobody was actually angry at any of this and it was just friendly banter. Makohari's banter wouldn't always get a pass though, as at one point it would make fun of a specific comedian, only for those chapters to never appear in its volume release, likely because the comedian complained and asked for them to be removed. Another aspect that firmly rooted Makohari in the time of its serialization was its ending, featuring a joke that another author, Hiroshi Gamo of Lucky Man fame, was actually the protagonist of the series. And in an odd move for Jump, many of Makohari's covers featured some kind of models, which is quite rare for the magazine. Jump almost always features its own series on the cover, but other rival magazines like Weekly Shonen magazine.
I thought, okay, I guess maybe, yeah, that's right, I was gonna say, like, I thought that was pretty common to have, like, graver idols on covers, but maybe not for Jump. I was thinking of maybe Ultra Jump or some other Jump.
Magazine or Sunday will have various idols or models with gravure features inside. Perhaps this was a request by Kita and Jump went along with it, as they were trying a lot of new things in this period anyway. From my perspective of going through all of Jump and seeing all of its covers pretty much, it is always a bit weird when you see real people on them, especially women in scantily clad clothing. Makohari is a pretty bizarre series from Jump. It's one that...
It is a weird concept when you think about it. I mean, like, it's literally jack-off material. Like, I don't really know what to say outside of that, right? Like, you have your manga magazine, which also serves as, like, fat material. Like, what else would be the purpose of putting graver idol photoshoot in manga magazine? Yeah. I mean, it's not, it's weird, but it's also like, you know, very, I don't know what to call it, I don't say progressive, but very like, it's a lot of bangs for your bucks, you know? You can read your manga and you can jack off. Great.
Caused a hefty amount of controversy in its time and seemed to be favored by editorial. It was also used as a gateway to introduce new aspects to the magazine, like a focus on celebrities, current events, and models, but due to it being firmly rooted in Japanese culture at the time, it's something a bit hard to get a grasp of now. That being said, it's also something perfect to discuss in these history videos, as it's a time capsule of a manga that gives us a glimpse into the wider world of Jump at the time, so it was pretty fascinating to look into. Shinkoen Dan Shinshiroku by Yasuteru Iwata would last 17 chapters in 2 volumes and be a delinquent cheerleading manga, not something I ever expected to see in Jump, quite frankly. While this sounds like the setup for a light-hearted and wacky gag manga, and by no means is it not that, surprisingly it seems to take itself quite seriously, perhaps aided by its cast's stoic, delinquent demeanors and the artwork featuring some very gruff faces. In that regard, it reminds me of the works of Akira Miyashita like Sakigake Otokojuku. Initially, cheerleading seems to be a gateway for boys to meet with and date girls, but the third year's cheerleaders inspire our set of protagonists, and they persevere through the grueling training in order to become proud cheer squad members. Perhaps it's because the premise was a bit too odd, or due to delinquents gradually falling out of popularity, Shinko and Dan Shinshiroku would meet a pretty quick end midway through the year. Continuing our String of Acts series from 1996, we have Diamond, lasting 17 chapters and 2 volumes by Yoshihiro Yanagawa. This would be a boxing manga following Tomoya Yamamoto, a high schooler with no prospects, dreams or goals, who one day meets a boxer jogging, who inspires him to pick up the sport. Diamond was characterized by being introspective, which I think comes across well in Yanagawa's artwork. The facial expressions and overall page composition conveys a listlessness that fits the premise well, but perhaps with a slower beginning and a quieter story, this wasn't the best fit for Jump, even in this experimental period. And on the other end of the spectrum, we have a...
And seriously, like, I can see why you call it a dark age. I mean, I guess sales fell down, but also, yeah, looking at it, it's like 1-2 volume manga, non-stop. I mean, just everything getting axed and cancelled fast. Yeah. And again, it's also interesting to imagine that it's probably like, not a case of like, there wasn't so much thing manga that could have been in. It's what was actually chosen by the editors and the people who approve which manga gets serialized, right? Because I'm sure by this point, late 90s, there's so many new artists that were inspired by manga growing up. So like, there's probably like thousands of potential artists with ideas. So I'm sure like a lot of blame really goes to like what the editors and Jump itself choose to serialize. I won't lie, a lot of stuff presented here just doesn't seem that interesting compared to some of the stuff they had before.
Another boxing manga, also lasting 17 chapters and 2 volumes, K.O. Masatome by Tatsunosuke Sonoda. If Diamond was something pensive with a focus on internal character exploration, K.O. Masatome is its direct opposite, being a silly explosive gag manga about a children's boxing club. It followed Masatome and friends goofing off, with the series being filled with all sorts of slapstick, dirty jokes, and referential humor. I find it pretty interesting that Jump would release 2 boxing manga back to back like this, even if they were pretty different, but it does go to show how popular the sport was, and perhaps with them knowing that Rokutenashi Blues was approaching its end, they wanted to find a new hit involving boxing. Sadly, neither of these would make it out of 1996.
Is Ajipo no Ippo around yet? I mean, I guess it's not a Jump manga.
This next series would finally spell some good news for Jump, becoming a big hit at the time from a beloved rookie mangaka, Ryu Fujisaki. Of course, we're talking about Hoshin Engi, which would last 206 chapters and 23 volumes, being a pivotal force that aided Jump in one of its darkest times. Debuting in the issue after Slam Dunk would end, Hoshin Engi had some big shoes to fill. Fujisaki's previous series, Psycho Plus, met with a blisteringly quick cancellation, and while his weird one-shots and experimental style was praised, the question remained, could Fujisaki create a sustainable hit for Jump that wouldn't alienate its readership? Hoshin Engi managed to achieve this, and in a fascinating way that relates back to the biggest hit Jump had ever had, Dragon Ball. This series, like Dragon Ball, would be based on one of the great classic Chinese novels. Dragon Ball was of course riffing on Journey to the West, but we also have stories like Suikoden or Water Margin, which you might be familiar with. This also has a Jump adaptation, but we won't be talking about
Suikoden. I know it's about like gathering like 108 heroes or something to fight a kingdom or something.
That for a very long time. Hoshin Engi is based on a story called Investiture of the Gods, or the Japanese novelization of it by Tsutomu Anno. I think there's some logic in thinking, well, if it worked for Dragon Ball, why not try something similar again? And paired with Ryu Fujisaki's own individual flair, it ended up succeeding. Hoshin Engi follows Taikobo in a world that mixes ancient China with high-tech sci-fi visuals, structures, and weaponry, giving it a unique vibe suitable for something made by Fujisaki. Here, humankind lives alongside the immortal Sennin, basically a kind of godlike equivalent, those who have attained immortality and possess a myriad of unique powers. Initially, Taikobo is tasked with sealing many of the Sennin who inhabit the human world through the Hoshin Project. And part of this is about taking down the nefarious Daki, who has usurped the throne of Yin through her cunning plans and seduction of its king. The integration of myth and legend is felt really strongly in Hoshin Engi's initial chapters. While reading, there's a level of randomness that's inherent with older folkloric stories. It's as if pieces are missing or the way people write was just different. I'm basing this off of my own readings of folklore, mainly of the Welsh Mabinogion, so I could be entirely off base here. But what this does is it gives Hoshin Engi a very unique vibe that's appropriate for its setting and what it's drawing from. It really does feel like you're reading some mythological scriptures or folklore stories. As the story progresses though, the depth of the characters expand and it becomes more of your usual battle shonen, though it has a focus on strategy and outwitting your opponent. Both Daki and Taikobo are smart, and the series goes to great lengths to show how. A lot of big moves are made that involve entire countries or large armies. Gathering allies is also a pivotal part of Hoshin Engi, and unlike a lot of other series where the main characters will wander around with a group of friends, in this case Taikobo often recruits people who will show up again way later, and you won't see them for a long time as they just train in the background. As much as Hoshin Engi can feel like your typical battle shonen, it does enough differently that it feels very fresh and unique. All of this build up in the first half of the story,
a little bit interested, I guess. Not crazy, but a little bit.
supplies are gathered, pays off immensely as stakes rise during its later arcs, and it honestly became one of the most gripping Jump manga I've ever read during its climax. What Hoshino Engi has to say about topics like conflict end up hitting really hard, and I think it has one of the best commentaries on the nature of violence that I've seen from a piece of media, at least within Jump. Taikobo is constantly trying to find options which avoid direct combat. He wants to save people, with an emphasis on people as in humans, which leads into some of the other things Hoshino Engi explores. The gods throughout the series are constantly meddling in the affairs of humans and the world at large. They often come across like they know better, but a big part of the series is them learning to step back, or Taikobo trying to reach a state where humanity gets its chance to do its own thing in its own way. And a lot of that is about having faith in humanity to do the right things, with it pushing a message that we should all try our best to live good lives and don't abuse the planet, in the hopes that future generations will do the same. It's about having faith in people, even if you know that in the end bad things will still happen, cycles will still repeat, and the manga itself is still self-aware about this in one of my favourite moments. But the optimism it presents and its belief in the future of humanity is something very important, and I think very core to a good Shonen Jump manga. Nothing good will happen if we don't believe in it or pursue it. Alongside this, it also explores how bad absolute control is by others, be they rulers, tyrants, or gods. One person controlling the fate of an entire country or civilization is not the way, and I think doing this through a story about the era of gods and myths ending is approached fantastically. Hoshino Engi isn't all seriousness though, as it's also incredibly funny and in its own Fujisaki branded way, heavily utilizing meta humor and fourth wall breaks, which at least for me works really well as they were present throughout the entire story and didn't detract from anything. This feeds into the art too, that likes to get experimental or feed into gags now and again, like the time it mimics a fighting game, or in perhaps my favourite moment in the entire series, the time the series fakes its own ending and becomes a brand new manga for at least a few pages. Nobody quite does it like Fujisaki. What he makes is bizarre and special. This is so apparent just from looking at how he draws. His characters have these big shiny eyes, reminiscent of popular 90s anime. I just think of Slayers or something when I see them. They are also clad in lavish clothing and have intricate machine-like giant boots or other elements to their designs that add a ton to the manga's setting and aesthetic. The way he colors too is beautiful. It's ethereal and spiritual even, but then it's mixed with the technology and machinery in a way you think would clash, but it doesn't. I think the incorporation of some of the technological elements is really interesting, and it reminds me of Evangelion in a way, though it's approached in its own way by melding it in with these ancient Chinese aesthetics as well. And while we're on the subject of art, I have to talk about Daki, who is one of the most stylish and attractive characters ever, who Fujisaki gives a new outfit to almost every time you meet her, and she slays every single time. I'm really surprised actually that people don't her, and she slays every single time.
Yeah, it's unique.
I'm really surprised actually that people don't bring her up as much. She's one of Shonen Jump's coolest antagonists, a female villain and pro-manipulator, girl boss extraordinaire, over 2 decades before the likes of Makima from Chainsaw Man. How she feeds into the ending also solidified her as one of my favourite characters perhaps ever. Also, shout out to Fugen Shinjin, who also has a killer design, and I love them to bits too. The
It looks like the Kaoru from Evangelion.
general cast of Hoshino Engi is great all around, and there's so many characters to pick and choose from for your favourites. They're all very likeable. As you can probably tell, I really love Hoshino Engi. It was a lot of fun to read, even though it took me quite a long time, as it's pretty wordy, and just look at this glossary page at the back of its volumes. There's a lot of specific language related to its story that's quite hard to grasp sometimes.
That's the thing with like any of the Chinese work.
So with that, I recognize it might not be for everyone, especially if you struggle with something like dyslexia. It was a bit tough for me to read with all of these names and phrases and different words for different types of characters or roles they had. It's dense ultimately, but if you can power through that, there's a lot to love here. In its heyday, it was a story that captured the people of the time by doing something familiar in a different way. Looping back to what I said in the beginning.
Okay, I keep waiting for him to mention if there's an anime or not, but I want to look it up. As always, the laziness of, feeling like watching an anime rather than read a manga, right? That's always what it is. Oshinengi. Oh, 2018, really? Oh, but it's rated terribly. Oof. I mean, 5.39, you might not think much, but I can tell you on my anime list, if something is rated this low, it's like the worst thing ever made. 23 episodes. Yeah. Alright. Is there like an alternative version? It seems like it. 26 episodes for 99. Yeah. I guess I'm not surprised there wouldn't be a full adaptation. This one is much better rated. Yeah. I guess the kind of thing where like I might actually watch the anime and then continue with the manga if I really like it or something. That might be what I do eventually, yeah. But yeah, the concept sounds good. I mean, at first I was like, but now that he's talked more about it, I'm actually kind of interested, yeah. What is a sequel to? I wanted to look at the author. Oh, character designer for Shiki as well. I love Shiki. And I now understand why the character design are crazy. That explains it, yeah. They've also done like a new Legend of the Galactic Heroes manga. Alright then. Alright.
Beginning, just like Dragon Ball, it approached a classic story but supercharged it with the author's own sense of style and interests. It may not be as universally beloved or approachable as Dragon Ball, but it's certainly special and a good representative for this era of Shonen Jump, which was constantly trying to find itself again after the Golden Age. We're not quite done with Hoshinengi yet though, as it would receive a lot of love outside of the original manga, including 2 anime adaptations. The first, dubbed Soul Hunter in English, ran for 26 episodes in 1999, and the second more recent, Hakyu Hoshinengi, ran for 23 episodes in 2018. The latter I've only ever heard bad things about, since it rushes through the story at an unprecedented rate, and overall I feel like without a substantial amount of episodes, Hoshinengi just might be a hard thing to adapt in general. It also received multiple video game adaptations. 2 for the Wonder Swan, an adorable little thing that never left Japan. The PS...
Yeah, actually, for a couple of years I have like this about 50 anime magazine from like the late 90s, 2000, and I've been trying to sell them. And recently someone contacted me talking about like an exchange. I pick a bunch of stuff from their own stuff they're selling, and we do an exchange. It didn't work out, but amongst the stuff that they had, there was like Ace Combat 5 that I wanted, Ace 1 and 2, and there was a Detective Conan game for the Wonder Swan. I might have had that.
Swan and Game Boy Color also got Hoshinengi games too, and it's fitting since Fujisaki is very vocal about loving video games in all of his author comments. To coincide with the new 2018 anime, more Hoshinengi was also created by Fujisaki, serialized in Young Jump for 7 chapters entitled Hoshinengi Gaiden. Some of this has been translated into English, but it's incomplete and mostly acts as a little side story after the manga's ending. Much like World Half, which we discussed earlier, Hoshinengi was also subject to getting a musical stage play adaptation which occurred throughout 2019 to 2020. There were 2 separate plays from what I could tell, but it seems like the pandemic might have affected any prolonged success. The costuming and casting look great though, and there will be a link to its website in the description if you'd like to look at it a little bit more. Doruhiro would last 14 chapters and 2 volumes by...
So yeah, all that to say Hoshinengi I'm interested. When I remember, eventually when I get back into reading manga big, I'm not in a manga phase right now, I mean, yeah.
Shuto Hori, being another new sports manga, but on a less popular one than boxing. Swimming. The setup involves Ryuji, a practitioner of judo, falling in love with his classmate Naomi, who's part of the swimming team in their school. So, in order to get closer to her, he joins the swim team without even being able to swim, and shenanigans ensue. It juggled romantic comedy elements alongside sports aspects, but didn't seem to captivate readers with any of this, leading to a very quick cancellation. There have been rumours, due to the series' drastic change in character designs, that the author gave up and their assistants finished the manga, but like with all rumours like this, take them with the tiniest grain of salt, as I don't think it's true and it's quite disrespectful to propose. Psychological profiler Aoi Kusanagi would last 23 chapters in 3 volumes by Shin Kisumi, Genichiro Nakamura, and Kaoru Tsukishima. As the title suggests, this is a mystery detective work with a focus on criminal profiling that sees its protagonist Kusanagi Aoi take out ne'er-do-wells with deductive reasoning and psychological tricks. From what I could find, the final case even involves a cyber killer who utilizes the internet to aid him or announce when murders will happen. Something worth mentioning, as in this time the internet would be something you'd see more and more of in works. It's actually brought up a bunch by Ryuji Fujisaki in Hoshina Engi's afterwards too. Like I mentioned in the last video, detective media had become exceptionally popular at the time, and it seems Jump was still aiming to get a hit akin to Shonen Sunday's Detective Conan, but alas, this would not be it.
話題沸騰の新感覚アニメ許せぬ悪をゲームバトルでぶち飛ばす究極のゲームアクション新番組遊戯王4月4日土曜夕方6時スタート
I've watched, I don't remember if I finished it. I know I finished the original like 26 episode anime. I've watched only a bit of it. It was alright. I wanted to get into it because when I was young, like when I was in middle school, in the mid-2000s, Pokemon was the big thing. Yu-Gi-Oh was never that big, even though it, you know, some people had some cards. And I've told the story before. There was this kid that one time was like showing off his Yu-Gi-Oh card, and I thought they were the coolest thing. But I thought, you know, the Pokemon one were like childish or something. Obviously, I was like edgy teenager, right? And one day during recess, I was walking after going to the bathroom or something, like in some kind of corridor, and by total chance, the guy had left his pack of Yu-Gi-Oh card on top of his like bag or something, and without thinking, I just grabbed a bunch, like as much as I could in one hand, stuck them in my pocket, and just left. I wasn't really like a thief at this point of my life or anything. I didn't even think about it again. Like it was almost like an instant like thing that I did, and I instantly regretted it. But I was too terrified to do anything about it. So I spent the rest of the day just like shitting myself that, you know, it was going to be found out that I just stole some Yu-Gi-Oh card. You know, then eventually it was fine. I went home and, you know, I stashed the card, and like for, I think a year or two, I just didn't really think about them until eventually I reminded myself about them. And yeah, that's my story of stealing some Yu-Gi-Oh cards from some poor kid. I feel kind of bad to this day, even though eventually I reminded myself about them, and I thought, yeah, these cards are pretty cool. And eventually there was another kid in high school that I like was also interested in Yu-Gi-Oh card, I guess, and I was trying to sell this card that I had stolen a couple years before to him, because I wanted to buy some game for PS3. So I think I ended up selling the pack of cards for like 250 euro or something to him, which was a lot. I kept trying to convince him that like some of those cards were like actually really rare and they would be worth a lot of money or something. I had no idea for sure, you know. Yeah, that's my story. Yeah, it's not a very nice story. I know it's kind of fucked up, but that's my story. I still feel bad about all this. Like, it's funny, it's been like freaking, like stealing the cards was like at least 15 years ago. But sometimes I think about it and I still feel bad. Yeah, it's one of those things. But yeah, again, I've always wanted to get more into Yu-Gi-Oh, but then I tried the anime a little bit, and you know, after a few episodes, I think, or maybe I finished the first season, but I can't remember for sure, I felt like it was, you know, extremely repetitive as expected, you know. It's funny because I did watch 200 episodes of Pokemon, which was extremely repetitive as well. But I think I was more motivated, yeah. As real. Yeah, maybe one day I'd have to try to give another shot to the franchise.
While Jump might have been struggling through trying to make a hit series chasing popular topics at the time, An unexpected hit would come from another relative newcomer. Ryuichi Fujisaki had some acclaim to his name, and Hoshinengi would certainly shape up to become a big hit, but 1986 would see another manga explode in popularity, focusing on slice-of-life school elements and supernatural shadow games. I'm of course talking about Yu-Gi-Oh! By Kazuki Takahashi, lasting 343 chapters and 38 volumes,
That's a lot,
meaning it ran well into the new millennium. Despite only a handful of chapters actually coming out in 1996, Yu-Gi-Oh! Managed to get its second Shonen Jump cover by the end of the year at chapter 10, which is a feat not many manga achieve, and it also beat Hoshinengi to its second cover, though that series would get many covers following this too. I don't really want to pit them up against each other, but more so what I'm trying to do here is to tell you that both of these were extremely popular new additions to Shonen Jump. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is such an odd series to discuss, since many people who aren't too deep into the anime manga sphere might assume it originated as a card game or anime, the 4Kids dub being the most popular thing in the West, but it all began in Weekly Shonen Jump, and what's more, the card game aspect wasn't the original focus. Much of manga Yu-Gi-Oh! Will be familiar to you though if you are a fan of the popular anime, as its core is a story about a boy wishing for friends and the games he plays with them. Plus, there's a lot of dark supernatural stuff too. If you've watched other history videos, you'll know I tackle some series in pieces, usually the popular ones like Dragon Ball, Yu Yu Hakusho, and JoJo. The series people are most familiar with, which ran for a long time and are separated into arcs. I find this gives a sense of place to the different eras of time if you know when different arcs took place. So with Dragon Ball, you could work out when the Cell Saga was going on and what other manga were in Jump at the time. Similarly, if you're a fan of Yu-Gi-Oh! Later on, you'll figure out what manga were going on while Battle City was taking place or whatever like that. So that's partially why I do this. Another reason why I'm going to specifically do it with Yu-Gi-Oh! Though is because I absolutely love it and it might be my favorite manga ever. And because of that, I have a lot to say about it. So if I don't talk about an aspect of Yu-Gi-Oh! Today that you're familiar with, or I don't go too deep into its spin-offs, its card game or different anime, rest assured we will get to those aspects eventually. For now though, let's discuss the very beginning of the series, which sees Yukimoto trying to build...
I guess this time around I listened to his introduction at the beginning, but like his other recap, in later video I think I'll skip obviously.
The Millennium Puzzle, a keepsake from his grandpa who runs a game shop, with games being the primary focus of the series. I'm sure I'll yap about the importance of games as long as Yu-Gi-Oh! Is present in these videos, but it's so integral to Yu-Gi-Oh!'s DNA as a series. From its initial setting, the name of the city, Domino City, the extra little mazes, spot the differences, and games Takahashi peppers into bonus pages, games are everywhere in the series. To Yugi as well, games are something he deeply loves, and a part of this is because they're activities you can do with friends, to have fun with and bond over, and friends are something he desperately wants, but he's so small and meek and has trouble making them. Yu-Gi-Oh! Also has an initial focus on bullying as well. Yuki gets bullied by Jonoichi or Joey Wheeler, as well as Honda, Tristan.
I mean, we're getting to the 90s and early 2000s, so late 90s, early 2000s, so yeah, there's a big change in the main characters, and this is where you start having like, yeah, the constant kind of like weakling main character who start bullied and slowly wants to get stronger basically.
I grew up with the 4Kids dub, so I'm going to be using their Western names since that's how I remember these characters, though the first time I mention these characters I'll bring up both, like how Taya Gardner is also named Anzu Mazaki, Yugi's childhood friend and love interest who stands up for him here and there. The focus initially though is on Yugi and his relationship with Joey, who ends up stealing a piece of the Millennium Puzzle to mess with him. Yugi building the puzzle but realizing he can't finish it, only to lament that his dream of finding friends will never come true, is really soul-crushing in chapter 1, but then you get Joey returning that piece and this act cements their friendship. Why he did this in the first place and change his bullying ways is because of Yugi's actions, standing up for him even though he's far smaller and weaker than Joey, calling him a friend despite how Joey has treated him. Yuki is such a lovely and sweet character, and this is apparent from the very beginning of.
It's probably like one of the most generic trope of all time. Yesterday I was watching a Doraemon movie, Stand By Me Doraemon, and literally the exact same lesson of, I am weak, I am bullied, but I need to stop asking Doraemon for help, so I'm gonna fight back, and then the bully is gonna respect me, and it's all good. Like, I don't know how many anime I've seen them do that every single time. Really good display of him going, since Dark Magician, DMG, and Exodia are also action figure.
The series.
Damn.
Usually I don't go crazy in depth with the manga I cover in the history series, but I find Yu-Gi-Oh! As a work is well loved, but people don't acknowledge how good and impactful it actually is. It's more than a hyper-serious supernatural card battler, and might be one of the strongest showings of a narrative focusing on friendships ever written. So I want to lay the groundwork for people to understand that through these videos. Plus, I think it helps illuminate why people in Japan were so invested in Yu-Gi-Oh! Even early on. The characters were always likable and you wanted to root for Yugi. I think the bullying aspects were important too. As I mentioned in my previous video with Genki Yade, a short manga about real-life bullying, it was a very important topic at the time. Bullying was rampant in the 90s as it was in most other times, but there seemed to be a big push at the time to help children suffering from it. So not only would Yu-Gi-Oh! Be a nice series to have on paper within the magazine, it would look good in helping Jump's image, but children and young adults might resonate with a character who's experienced similar things and would get the catharsis when he overcomes his bullies. And in a really cool way, Kazuki Takahashi manages to integrate the aspect of gaming with this aspect of bullying by seeing Yugi beat all of his bullies through games. After fully completing the Millennium Puzzle, Yugi now gets periodically possessed by the Pharaoh housed inside, something we're not privy to yet, so he mainly comes across as Yami Yugi or Dark Yugi early on. When Yugi or his friends are in a spot of trouble, he'll transform and initiate a shadow game with his adversaries, which sets up Yu-Gi-Oh's initial formula. Someone gets bullied or some antagonist is going to do something bad, Yugi challenges them to a game which often feeds into their flaw or sin they're about to commit, and Yugi craftily beats them or they cheat. In the first chapter, it revolves around Ushio extorting Yugi for money, so they play a game where they have to pick yen bills up with a knife on their hands. Ushio ends up cheating and now is doomed to see leaves as the money he craves. It's a fitting punishment for someone who is over-focused on money and is greedy. 1996 sees a bunch of episodic chapters like this. Yugi fights a corrupt filmmaker with a dice game, leading to his site being mosaicked. He then burns the criminal alive with a clever game involving both of them only being able to use one finger, and he sends an explosive to a bully through a game of ice hockey played on a hard griddle. These are all inventive scenarios focused on little games that don't last long. They all feed into the evils the characters commit and are satisfying when Yugi beats them, although a lot of them are quite brutal. Some scenarios are a bit less game-like, but the message they convey is nice and the tone is still there. It's also pretty dark, aided by Takahashi's art, with Yamayuki's expressions being particularly impish.
It's
On the subject of art though, let's talk about that briefly since it's very different from Takahashi's later style. Characters here are less unified, they're a bit blobbier, and the eyes Takahashi would be known for haven't quite manifested yet. I really love this art style though, it's so expressive and all the characters feel a bit off, which really adds to the series' slightly creepy vibe. They're also cute in their own way too, especially Yugi, and I think that meshes with the slice of life school setting well. Much of what I've discussed might sound very different if you're familiar with just the core card game aspect of Yu-Gi-Oh, but worry not as 1996 ends with Yu-Gi-Oh's first multi-chapter story, The Cards with Teeth, which initially acted as a parody on Magic the Gathering, though this card game that Takahashi concocted as a substitute would go on to become Duel Monsters itself.
That's crazy to think about
becoming the focus of the series.
That the manga didn't actually start with the card game in mind, right? Eventually he thinks of it for like a little arc, and then it becomes so big that they make the game in real life, they start printing cards, and it becomes like this insane money machine. I mean, talk about like unexpected consequences of of things. It's pretty amazing.
But this story sees the game's introduction, as well as set up Kaiba and Grandpa's precious blue-eyes white dragon for the very first time. Something I want to touch on here is how people will often discuss Yu-Gi-Oh! And a lot of
playing with the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Sets, and you can very quickly tell it was a game made by someone for a story. Yeah, that makes sense.
Conversation around it is very segmented, I think. I'll often see people focused on liking the card game arcs more, or people saying the original few arcs or Season 0, which we'll get to later, is better or somehow separate. But I think all of this is Yu-Gi-Oh! And I love it holistically. The Cards with Teeth is a good example of this. It features the same formula, characters, and art as the previous few episodic ones, but there is something undeniably special when these cards show up. Maybe it's nostalgia or the way Takahashi draws the cards themselves, they just look excellent as part of his page layout. The designs of the cards as well are simple and the art is striking and creepy. The introduction of duel monsters gives us our first larger game too. It's not something just concocted by Yugi on the spot. There's deeper rules and a sense of individuality to what cards you choose and use. In this arc you also get to see Yugi and friends crowd around school tables, playing the game and having fun. Everything that makes Yu-Gi-Oh! Special is here in spades. I think the illustrations overall take a big leap here too, as the already appealing art of Takahashi is complemented by his great monster designs, many of which are still highly iconic cards like Battle Ox, Summon Skull, Mystical Elf, and of course Blue Eyes White Dragon.
From like the story I told earlier about stealing some Yu-Gi-Oh! Card, I had Battle Ox, I had Mystical Elf, and I had Blue Eyes White Dragon, of course, yeah. I remember like all of these cards, yeah. Yeah, they said most of the levels don't matter much, and it's basically a waiting game on who can draw the biggest beater first.
Nami Yugi is also solidified a bit more here too. He's a little less impish, and the way he goes about punishing Kaiba while uplifting Yugi and Grandpa's values feels a lot less sinister. There's a focus at the end that Kaiba has to experience death, but only an illusory version, in the hopes that he understands why the cards he plays with and the game itself are special to him and everyone else. There's a weird kindness in that, at least to me, and there's a focus here on loving games, which is what Yu-Gi-Oh! Is all about. I think that's the perfect way to set Yu-Gi-Oh! Up. All the pieces of the puzzle feel like they've fallen into place, and I've gotten to talk about the core of the series.
Seems cool.
So next time we can focus on how things evolve. Before we end with Yu-Gi-Oh! For this video though, I do want to bring up some supplemental media and adaptations. By this point, it's way too early for Yu-Gi-Oh! To have gotten anything, be it cards, video games, spin-offs, or anime, but I do think mentioning Yu-Gi-Oh!'s first anime right now is a good idea. Before the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime most of us know and love,
original Yugi deck has a card that would specifically just fuck over Dragon, so you can counter Kaiba.
Done by Studio Gallop, there was a version of Yu-Gi-Oh! Produced in 1998 by Toei Animation, lasting 27
That's the one I've tried, I'm pretty sure. I mean, let me see. Man. Let me see what I've actually tried of Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! 1998. Oh yeah, I did finish it. Yeah, but I gave it a 5 out of 10. That's right. I mean, again, to tell you, I couldn't even remember if I finished it or not. Yeah, I did finish the original adaptation. I don't know. I just remember it being very meh. Like on one side, I love the concept of Yu-Gi-Oh, right? The card fights and all that, but watching it, I remember feeling meh. That's it. I don't know. But I know there's like a gazillion anime of it, so maybe there's some better version of it. Also maybe, you know, I would like it more now because I think I tried watching this a very long time ago, so yeah.
Episodes that focused on adapting Yu-Gi-Oh!'s earlier chapters prior to Duelist Kingdom. Affectionately, this is known as Season 0. There's some filler pertaining to the various Shadow games, and notably, Miho Nosaka is given a much bigger presence, whereas she's only really around for one chapter in the manga. It's an interesting relic of Yu-Gi-Oh! That not everyone is aware of, so here you go. If you want to watch a different version of Yu-Gi-Oh!, you can. While looking into this as well, I found there's a partial fan dub for it by Team Millennium Productions, which I think is very cool, and it's still an active project that they're working on, so if this is something you like the sound of, please check it out. I adore Yu-Gi-Oh!, so seeing people still passionately engage with the series in any way fills me with an immense amount of joy. And with that being said, if you've never read Yu-Gi-Oh! And consider yourself a fan of Shonen Jump, please give it a shot. There's plenty there for you if you've seen the anime, and I promise it's one of the magazine's best manga ever, and I can't wait to talk about it more in the future with these history videos.
Okay, it's definitely always been a franchise that I want to give more of a chance, be it like the manga or like another anime or something. Yeah.
Majoko Vivian would last 43 chapters and 4 volumes by Yutaka Takahashi, following the witch Vivian, who leaves her home, the island of Avalon, to get married to a Japanese high school boy named Ikkyu Akari. However, she doesn't leave alone, as her friend and fellow witch Arune follows suit, leading to the beginning of a magical rom-com of sorts. From what I can find, there's a lot of gags like in Yutaka Takahashi's prior series Bonbon Zaka, as well as romantic elements, but there's a greater focus on fantasy world building here, and at least a few pages of actual battles. So unlike Bonbon Zaka, it seemed to be a more well-rounded series focusing on a lot of different elements. There was plenty of comedy though, and a core gag of the series seems to stem from Vivian's high level of mana, which means she can cast all sorts of spells, but is really bad at controlling them. It just seems super endearing, whimsical, and a fun time overall. The art reflects this as well, with the character designs being some of my favourite from the period. In particular, I just want to bring up the covers, which all look beautiful. They're so colourful and have this peaceful feeling about them, which I just want others to see. This would be the final manga Yutaka Takahashi would release in Jump, with them having a pretty fruitful career with gag manga, and personally, despite my distaste for their prior series, this is a manga I would really like to read and see translated one day. Be Takuto by Takashi Noguchi would last 20 chapters in 2 volumes and would follow Takuto Yachio, a boy full of courage who loves motorcycles, with the manga featuring them prominently initially before moving on to karate, as well as peppering in 2 love interests for the main character, a karate teacher and their childhood friend. Like Noguchi's other work, it seems like they just threw everything they liked into a pot and prayed it would stick, and while this would last longer than usual for them, it would still get cancelled pretty quickly, with them leaving the magazine after 3 cancellations in total.
Oof.
Now, that's a bit of a dull way to end the year, but a few other events would occur throughout 1996 which I'll bring up, including Kochikame hitting its 1000th chapter, a pretty landmark moment for Shonen Jump.
That was the first, right? I mean, in reality, there's probably very few manga that ever hit 1000 chapters.
We haven't touched on Kochikame much since its debut, but it's still going strong at this point, and what's more, 1996 saw the debut of its anime too, which is pretty relevant to us right now, as that's getting an official English release by Remao, which if you're in North America at least, you can watch for free on their YouTube channel. I'll leave a link to that below. Sadly, if you're not from the US like me, you can't watch it, but hey, maybe one day they'll open that up so other people can see it too. Another huge event to occur in 1996 would be Slam Dunk ending. Seeing the match between Sano and Shohoku, which had been going on for multiple volumes, finally come to a climactic and absurdly well-drawn end. In one of the only instances ever, it would get the cover for its final chapter, as well as the entire chapter in full color. While the full color chapter treatment would happen again multiple times, only 3 Jump manga have ever ended with the cover, those being the last 2 manga we talked about, Kochikame, which is way into the future, as well as Slam Dunk. The third is Yamazaki Ginjiro by Hiroshi Motomiya, which we discussed forever ago, and is more of a testament of how popular Motomiya was back then. Even though he'd left the magazine by this point, I still find ways to bring him up, which amazes me. He's such a cool figure in Jump's history. Speaking about cool figures in Jump's history, the final thing I want to bring up before we move on to our roster talk section is a change in editorial. This has happened numerous times throughout Jump's history, and I probably should have brought them up to be honest, but I just flat out lack knowledge and interest in this subject. But out of every single editor Jump's ever had, I'd wager the most well-known and perhaps most impactful was Kazuhiko Torishima, who would become the new editor-in-chief this year in 1996. Torishima's influences extend far beyond his editor-in-chief position and Jump overall, with him being very prolific throughout his entire life. Notably for us though, he's responsible for dragging Toriyama into Jump and served as his editor for a long period of time, with Dr. Slump even naming its villain, Dr. Mashirito, after him.
I think this is the one that Toriyama really dislikes, yeah. Yeah.
He would go on to further influence the inner workings of Jump, helping bring more video game related elements to the magazine with the Famicom Shinken column, and was an important part in the initial creation of Dragon Quest. These experiences would aid Torishima in the near future, as he'd be put in charge of the creation of V-Jump, a sibling magazine to Shonen Jump with a focus on video games targeted at a younger audience, which is still running and is still successful to this day. It's a shoo-in that someone this innovative might make for a good editor-in-chief for the main magazine, and as it was struggling after losing some of its biggest hits, why not ask the person who was integral in bringing one of those big hits to Jump to help the magazine out in its time of need? Torishima would refuse for a while, but did capitulate, taking over the position of editor-in-chief in February of 1996, but what he would do was perhaps unexpected to everyone else. Torishima quickly realized that the current trajectory of Jump wasn't working, and with his knowledge of video games and media...
I mean, that was pretty obvious, like 2 years of ton of the classic ending, and while some new manga would run for a long time, they weren't like massive, and then you had like infinite amount of manga cancelled in one volume.
Yeah, outside of manga, he knew that the magazine sales weren't everything, so there was a new focus on getting new series to a stage where anime, video games, and more could do some of the heavy lifting sales-wise. Another thing Torishima is known for is pushing away the old guard of Jump to focus on new authors, which will become more apparent as we continue throughout the 90s, but in this year alone, we would see works by new authors which would explode. Ryo Fujisaki and Kazuki Takahashi would both skyrocket into popularity with their new series. He held the belief that Jump constantly circulating new blood with fresh and interesting ideas would be pivotal to the magazine's success, and he was right. Torishima isn't the sole reason Jump would claw its way out of this dark age. So many editors and authors of all these series played a big part too, but his leadership and decisions played a big role in shaping the Jump we know and love today. And as we'll come to see in the coming years, he would place it on a ship that would guide it safely into the new millennium. Honestly, I don't think I've done Torishima justice here. He's such a fascinating individual with a ton of history surrounding him, and while some of the things he says rubs me the wrong way and sounds overtly bureaucratic, I think it's evident that he loves manga and art because he's done so much to support the magazine, its artists, and the series they create. Now let's take a look at Jump at the beginning and end of 1996 to see how things...
part. I mean... yeah, it's looking a bit weak. At least as far as like what I know of like popular work, right? Okay, well, let's watch another one. Oh, the next one is where One Piece starts. Yeah, let's watch one more for today. The 1998 one. No, 1997, sorry. And I guess we'll watch the roster in that one. Let's see what happens.
Throughout its history, Shonen Jump has continued to evolve as a manga magazine. It started humbly in the late 60s, gradually rose to prominence through cutthroat cancellations and a trailblazing attitude. But come the 80s, it would explode in popularity, with hit after hit series finding their home in Jump, the magazine then innovating and helping to evolve different genres or styles. If you've been following along with these videos, you'll also know that I've referred to the last few years, 1995 and 1996, as Shonen Jump's Dark Age, a period where magazine circulation dipped due to an exodus of hit series from the magazine, most notably Dragon Ball and Slam Dunk. While it would take some time to regain the spot of best-selling manga magazine, 1997 would see a particular series debut which would change the face of Jump and manga as we know it forever. Yep. Before we get to it though, there's plenty of other series that debut.
And as I said, I mean, you know, I'm more here for like all the one I don't really know, so One Piece is cool, but yeah.
Throughout the year to look at, so let's dive headfirst into Shonen Jump in the year 1997. To kick off the year, let's check out some smaller works from a beloved author we haven't seen for a little bit, Akira Toriyama. 1997 would see him return, with the year being bookended by two small series at the very beginning and end. The first of these short series is Toki Mecha, lasting just 3 chapters, which honestly is just a one-shot split into 3 short chapters, which makes its relative obscurity make much more sense. It's only about 45 pages total. It's a fun little story though of a girl building a time machine, going back to the past, meeting a cave boy called Mu, and then classic silly Toriyama shenanigans ensue, complete with robots and dinosaurs. There were one-shots published during and post Dragon Ball's run, but this got the cover and seemed to spark a bit of a return for the author within the magazine, which I'm sure editorial were happy with. Sadly, Toki Mecha hasn't seen the wider release other Toriyama manga has had, with there being no official way to read it in English, and I'm unsure if it was ever bundled in with any other one-shot collections anywhere else either. I'm sure this is by virtue of it being quite short, and his future works in Jump would have much more eyes on them, like the next manga we're going to look at, which debuted at the tail end of 1997. Skipping to the end of the year briefly, Kawa would last 14 chapters and would have enough pages for a whole volume, and this is something you can read in English both physically and through online platforms like the Shonen Jump app. I'm not sure if this is true of Toki Mecha, but Kawa also marks Toriyama stepping into the foray of digital art, which makes sense as a considerable portion of the series has been colored. I feel this is also reflected in how Kawa has been drawn. The designs are cute and stripped back, but don't take me calling them simple detract from how good they are. I feel Toriyama is a master of drawing so many things, and included is simpler gag-based stuff. He did start out with Dr. Slump after all. Kawa's simplicity also extends to its cast of monster children. They see the world in a very naive and fun way, which makes the art quite fitting. There is a twist to all of this though, because we follow little monsters, so their perceptions on what's cool or scary is flipped. Angels, kisses, and pretty things, these are what scare them, and conversely, more gross and horror adjacent stuff is their jam. Kawa is a work full of great comedy from Toriyama. His slapstick is great here, especially considering the kids are paired up with this middle-aged human man to bounce off of, a hallmark of Toriyama's later work. I definitely recommend checking this out. It's a nice, short, cozy read that will surely make you laugh. I've even talked about it once before in this video on older vampire manga, so watch that too if you'd like some more vampire manga recommendations.
Okay, interesting. I definitely need to read some shorter work from Toriyama. Snack.
Keeping things a bit spooky and continuing on.
Oh, more recap of Yugi. I said I'll pass, so we shall pass.
2 volumes by Yuki Kawashima.
Kaido.
Contrary to its super cute cover, this would be a full-on science fiction work, following a frog-like robot in a world where humanity is in hiding as robots have rebelled and almost all of them have been wiped clean off the map. In its run, it tackled ideas pertaining to how people view robots and likely how we define humanity, as robot sci-fi tends to do. Like in the first chapter, we see a girl whose family was killed off by robots, but she still warms up to this froggy friend. Frog-kun also seems to possess a human heart, and so he fights off robots attacking humans, and when equipped with a sword, he transforms slightly, becoming a lot more angular. It's an interesting concept, a wandering frog warrior in this post-apocalypse world, and from my understanding, it really tried to vary what ideas it was tackling in its short run, showing off both humans and robots in positive and negative lights. There was mentions of a
I really
human
like the
being
art.
wanting revenge for losing an arm, as well as a psychopathic robot that believes they could become human if they killed one. It's a shame this one didn't last very long, and it's something I would totally love to see get a translation someday because it seems like a cool little manga. Our next manga would be the first big hit that would debut in 1997, Hanasaka Tenchi Tenten-kun, a gag series by Kazumata Ogiri lasting 162 chapters and 17 volumes. Tenten-kun is an angel who has been sent down from heaven to guide elementary schooler Hideyuki Sakura with finding his talent since God made him talentless at birth through a slip-up caused by Tenten. Of course, this leads to a Doraemon-style silly gag manga complete with magical angel and devil items, where Tenten and Hideyuki go around getting involved in all sorts of mischief because Tenten isn't exactly the paragon of virtue he should be, although he always does try his best to help. This series would run for 3 years up until the turn of the millennium, and during that time it would receive a 43-episode anime adaptation by Nippon Animation, as well as a game for the Game Boy Color titled Hanasaka Tenchi Tenten-kun Beat Break, with it being a rhythmic puzzle game. I don't think Tenten is especially well known outside of Japan, but it served as a gag pillar jump for a time.
I think most gag stories like this will never have been heard outside of Japan, right? This is way too specific. Yeah.
And its creator Kazumata Ogiri is still creating new manga for Saikyo Jump, having had a prolific career in children's gag manga. Butsu Zone would see the debut of Hiroyuki Decay in Jump, and while a future series of Decay would last much longer, this one would only last 19 chapters and 3 volumes total. It follows Senju, an emissary sent down from the Butsu Zone by the Bodhisattva Kanon to escort a young girl to India who is the reincarnation of Muroku, the supposed savior of humanity. It's a work steeped in Buddhist faith and intertwines wordy dialogue and explanations of various Buddhist lore with your usual battle shonen elements you'd expect from Jump. This is an odd combination, and while it does stumble a lot, it's very interesting, both through it adapting elements of religion into a shonen manga, but also through the intersection of your classic optimistic shonen protagonist with the beliefs and teachings of Buddhism. There's an almost conversational element to how it tackles certain ideas regarding conflict. The question, can you put love and kindness above all else, even in the most harrowing of circumstances, does come up, and it makes sense for it to appear. It would have been nice to see it answered with more time at its disposal though. There's a lot of charm to Butsu Zone in its art, philosophy, and its journey aspects. It has a full fan translation should you want to read it, and for fans of Decay's later hit Shaman King, a certain character will be very familiar to you, which I think is pretty neat. Returning to an established author once again, 1997 would see Masakazu Katsura return after a few duds in Jump with arguably his most famous work, Eyes, which would run for 143 chapters and 15 volumes. In comparison to Shadow Lady, DNA Squared, and Video Girl I, this series would tone down any science fiction elements and opt to be a pretty standard romance drama. Eyes follows multiple characters whose names start with I, the protagonist Ichitaka and his 2 love interests Iori and Itsuki, with a 3rd and 4th character joining the cast later on, Izumi and Aiko. Initially, Ichitaka crushes on Iori, who is a model, and juggles getting to know her with his relationship with his childhood friend Itsuki, who has this insanely indulgent job of making movie-grade props, and with how much detail has gone into this little side thing, it's easy to see where Katsura's passions actually lie. Something I always enjoy about his work is just seeing all of the little things he crams in which are personal to him. It is mostly stripped.
Definitely, like, one thing I've learned throughout this series of Jump videos is, this artist is incredible, and absolutely I will need to dive into him. As you guys know, often when I get obsessed with an artist, I try to read everything from them, which tends to be only a little bit since, it's rare for an artist to have everything translated. That's kind of, a shame. But this artist, his stuff looks incredible.
Down, however, compared to past works by him. Maybe it's because I've read a number of Katsura's works prior, but Eyes feels very safe. There's no science fiction weirdness, there's a bunch of common shonen romance tropes like misunderstandings, people being late, the main character not being able to decide between multiple girls. It just didn't hit the same to me as Video Girl Eye. The emotional elements never quite landed as hard, and there's a lack of depth or exploration into other ideas that would be present in Katsura's other works. That's not to say I think Eyes is bad though, it's extremely robust, it hits all the romance and drama elements it needs to really, it doesn't overstay its welcome too much either, and its sidecasts are pretty likable and fun, with it even having a gay character who's treated very positively, minor stereotyping aside. And since this is by Masakazu Katsura, the art is phenomenal. His characters are always pretty, his expressions are rich, and he knows how to lay out a page in a satisfying way. I'm not the biggest fan of his covers for Eyes though. They're
yeah. Like, left one is fine, but the middle and right one are... They look like an normal manga cover. I mean, say the middle one especially. She looks like a fucking demon.
Technically really brilliant. They're detailed, the colors pop in satisfying ways, but there's a certain uncanniness to his hyper-realistic art that I've never been able to shake. After this series, Katsura would move on from Jump, branching out into other ventures that seemed more catered to his interests. From my understanding, Eyes was partially done out of obligation to cater to a specific demographic or genre without much of his more out there ideas, so
Did he actually say that? I mean, I can understand, right? As an author, you know, he had two early work that were popular with, you know, like the romance multi-relationship style. Then he tried a couple other ideas that just were cancelled. He probably felt like, yeah, I mean, I guess that's all I'm good at, this kind of stories. You know, even if I want to do different one, it's not gonna work out, so I might as well do this. I think a lot of artists end up like this, right? In music especially, you know, it's like a band has a style of music, then one time they try something different and everybody is mad, so they just keep for the rest of their career doing the same style. And it doesn't mean that like it's bad, but you know, it's sometimes sad for the artist who wanted to do something different, right?
Him banging out one more well-regarded hit in this area despite him having interests in other things is super admirable. It may sound as if I'm being a bit harsh or dismissive of Eyes, and that might be my Video Girl Eye fan brain running in overdrive, but Eyes is good, and if you're hankering for an older rom-com ecchi drama, it's worth checking out. Its popularity at the time too would lead to it getting a novelization with an original story, a PS2 dating sim / visual novel game, and later on some anime OVAs, adding to about 8 total episodes, running from 2002 to 2006. It has also remained in the public conscious too, since in 2018 it received a TV live-action adaptation which ran for 13 episodes. Eyes hasn't been neglected outside of Japan either, as it has a full English physical release, much like Video Girl Eye, and is available in an official capacity digitally as well. Another returning mangaka wouldn't get so lucky, with Masaya Tokahiro, creator of Jungle King Ta-chan, serializing Wrestling with Momoko this year.
Sorry, I just want to note the name Masakazu Katsura. Yeah, mental note, I guess.
Of Jungle King Ta-chan, serializing Wrestling with Momoko this year, running for just 18 chapters and 2 volumes. The title is pretty self-explanatory. It's a wrestling manga following the main character Momoko, who ends up setting up a wrestling club in school and trains with a bunch of boys, which leads to a ton of ecchi gags, which were Masaya Tokahiro's speciality. Alongside this, the series did see the character and wrestling growth of its cast as they practiced more and more, as it tried to be more of your traditional sports series as well. There's a genuineness to how Tokahiro depicts his characters interacting, and I think that comes across in his artwork. Characters can be goofy, but there's also an earnestness to their smiles and attitude. Unfortunately, it was likely that Masaya Tokahiro's style of storytelling and perhaps ecchi elements had fallen out of style over time, as this would be the last manga he would make within Jump. It was bound to happen eventually, especially with the then editor-in-chief Torishima's push for newer artists to debut over veterans, so his presence in future videos will be missed.
Sure.
Merry Wind by Junji Yamamoto would be a baseball manga, lasting just 11 chapters and 2 volumes that focused on juggling drama elements with its sport. It would see Kazuma Yamakawa enrolled in a new school, one with a weak team, in order to raise it up to beat his rival Yuji Tsukamoto. But when Kazuma finds out about his rival's death, his resolve regarding baseball falters, leading to the aforementioned drama elements. Throughout its short run, hardly any baseball was actually played, and the way it laid everything out is said to be confusing in some places, since it hides the reveal about Kazuma's rival for several chapters. In the end, it wouldn't make much of a mark in Jump, likely since it was toying with a similar setup that had been played out for over a decade, leading it to be one of many short-lived sports series that feel...
I mean, again, this is the kind of thing where, like, you could say the author isn't being very original, but something tells me, again, like, the problem is more like the editors, right? Like, there must be quite a bunch of editors, and the people who decide what gets serialized, which is, you know, try to catch the same fire as before, right? Like, this manga was specifically popular, so they keep trying to, like, find something almost exactly the same. They seem to do that a lot with the sports series, for example. Yeah.
The magazine. Joker by Kazutoshi Yamane would be his second and last manga in Jump, sadly ending just after 15 chapters and 2 volumes. Why I find this such a shame is how cool Yamane's stories are, with this one being about a pro wrestler who mutates and dons a mask, becoming Joker, the clown of justice who fights other evil mutated wrestlers who plan to take over the world. Pro wrestling, I find, is such a ripe sport and medium for manga to specifically merge with, since it has the capacity to harbor all these long-running stories between the wrestlers, as well as showing the behind the scenes of a given venue. Joker also followed a heel wrestler, giving it more of an anti-hero protagonist, but perhaps it's because of that combined with taking things in a battle direction and having more of an American comics influence that led to it not clicking much with Jump's audience at the time. Yamane's artwork also can't be praised enough by me. It's so stylish and of its time. The huge sharp 90s eyes, the sharp teeth, and the overall costume designs are super up my alley. Thankfully, Yamane would go on to create more manga after this, but I wish he did get to grace the pages of Jump a little bit more. In a way, you could view Jump itself like a wrestling organization. Both have a roster of fighters, so to speak. Some get pushed more than others, and some get dropped over time, though it doesn't swap out its top wrestler nearly as much. This year would see its top dog change though, and Joker was part of a batch of 3 manga alongside it, and the next manga we're going to talk about. Sekimatsu leader Den Takeshi would be a big hit of 1997, running for 237 chapters within Weekly Shonen Jump, amassed into 24 volumes by Mitsutoshi Shimabukuro. The general premise sees a boy be born named Takeshi who has the features of a grown man, including a cleft chin, stubble, and enhanced motor functions, allowing him to walk just after 2 days of being born. Inspired by his father's life goal of being a leader, Takeshi too wishes for just that, and the series mostly follows him helping out his classmates and being a general good guy. There's some genuine heart to it, with lessons which I think would be beneficial to kids being a constant in the early chapters. They remind me of Yakuza sub-stories in a way, like this music came on in my head when I was reading, whenever Takeshi helped out someone in need, or if a story was a little bit sad. If this is all Takeshi was, my opinion of it would be pretty high, but it tends to go a bit all over the place. Primarily it is a comedy manga, so of course it has different gag elements, a lot of crude humor, poop and pee jokes, absurdist comedy, slapstick, and the general jokes that come from Takeshi looking like an adult man. More than a few other students also come across like they're older too, which does lend to it being pretty funny in a lot of cases, as these supposed children who look like adult men fight each other and do all sorts of other silly things. Alongside the gags, sometimes it'll veer into battle shonen territory too, which is a lot more apparent later on, where entire arcs revolve around fighting. This can take the form of Takeshi and friends fighting other students, adults, or just straight up monsters. The world is ultimately not very well defined and is a sandbox for whatever quirky stuff Shimabukuro can think up, with him often breaking the fourth wall with little text boxes, or him just appearing as a character within the series, even placing and winning in popularity polls in some cases. Admittedly, I didn't enjoy these parts as much, and I felt they were a lot more random, but also typical of other gag manga. Like, anything could create an absurd storyline like this.
Sure.
It shines most when it's confined to its school setting, and Takeshi can exhibit that he's a good leader by looking out for his buddies. More on elements I don't like, I also might as well mention that some of the jokes really don't track. There's the homophobic stuff you're likely to see from this era. There's one joke about a molestation train some characters have to go through as part of a little tournament. Sexual assault was brought up a few times for comedic sake early on, and sure, I don't like it, but it feels especially out of place in such a child-focused manga. And probably the worst of it is this joke where a character gets called a pedophile and says their strike zone is middle school, second grade and above, which I think is a good enough segue into Sekimatsu leader Den Takeshi and Mitsuto.
I don't know what to say about stuff like this as always. Like, it really doesn't bother me. It's a joke, it's meant to be stupid, and you know, like I've seen it in so many anime, this specific joke, right? A character saying something like that, I mean, I'm fine with people saying it's a bad joke or it's a weird joke, but I don't think it's really funny myself. But it's like, it really doesn't bother me that much. But again, I tend to be a lot more, what's the word for it? I don't want to say open-minded because someone is gonna say it's the opposite, but like all the bad joke or like, you know, racist joke, dark joke, stuff like that, I mean, I don't know. I can understand how joke bother people and can hurt people, but for me it's like, I don't know, if it's a manga, a TV show, an anime, whatever it is, you know, I don't mind people criticizing it, but it really doesn't bother me that much. But, you know, I guess some people will argue it's a problem with me not being like, you know, not caring enough about, you know, weight can hurt or stuff like that. I don't know. I've always been kind of like mixed about stuff like this, where like I understand why it bothers some people, and yet for me, like, it's not my favorite joke or anything, so like I don't care that much. I just automatically kind of dislike when people say, you know, this is bad, and, you know, or, and like it should be removed or something. I don't really mind when people just say like I don't like it or it's problematic or something like that, right? So, as long as they don't say like, you know, it should be removed or something. That's why I feel like, yeah, I don't know. It's a freaking piece of manga, right? It's like, I don't know. I'm not saying that Trenton Art is doing that, right? He always brings up like stuff that he finds problematic, but he doesn't say that it should be removed or something, right? So, yeah. I'm always mixed about stuff like this. Again, like, I'm definitely not one of those people that's like, you know, constantly like fighting the gender war, the woke stuff and all that. I really hate people like that. YouTube always try to recommend me video like this, and I'm always like blocking channels like this because I can't stand it. But I'm also like not on the other extreme of, you know, constantly like wanting to cancel stuff or, you know, bad jokes being problematic in some way, you know. I'm fine with people discussing why they think it's bad, but beyond that, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just that I don't care enough. That's what it is. Like, yeah, that joke is weird, but I feel like I've seen it so many times in anime that I just don't care for it, yeah.
Bakuro's biggest controversy.
Sorry for the tangent.
In August of 2002, Weekly Shonen Jump combined issue of 36-37 would see the final chapter of Takeshi be published in the magazine, and this is because around the time, Mitsutoshi Shimabukuro was caught violating child prostitution laws. Shimabukuro's sentence was suspended for this, however.
Wait, can we go back? Yeah, I kind of missed. Is it the author of this one?
Probably the worst of it is this joke where a character gets grade and Mitsutoshi, which I think it says that it, but worst zone is middle school leader Den Takeshi and Mitsutoshi Shimabukuro's biggest controversy. In August of 2002, Weekly Shonen Jump combined issue of 36.
Okay, no, so the author that made that joke did that. Okay, well, I had to go on this freaking tangent on the worst fucking case. Yeah, okay.
37 would see the final chapter of Takeshi be published in the magazine.
I should have said
this because around the time, Mitsutoshi Shimabukuro was caught violating child prostitution laws. Shimabukuro's sentence was suspended for this, however, which gradually let him worm his way back into the magazine.
Oh, he's also the author of Toriko. I see. I've heard of it and this controversy, yeah. People often talk about it, you know, like on the same way as the author of Rurouni Kenshin, yeah. Yeah. Okay, well, obviously that's a different case, right? Yeah. then like here the joke is really like especially bad because the author actually meant it, kind of thing, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, I really had to go on my tangent at the worst possible time. I'm about to go on the tangent of, loli stuff is fine if it's only like, again, like in manga and anime, and then he's about to bring up something that's gonna like, be the worst timing once again. Okay.
Industry and later back into Jump. Takeshi would be finished in Super Jump with extra chapters. It's again a frankly disgusting turn of events I have to bring up in regards to an author in this period, and I think the one thing that upsets me the most about this is how not much consideration is ever given for the situation of the victim. With this context, it makes reading Takeshi quite difficult for me, especially when jokes...
yeah, it really changes the thing, right? That's what I talked about Kenshin, right? I think Kenshin, for the most part, is just a nice shonen action anime, and as far as I remember, there's nothing creepy in it. So I think it's easier to separate the art from the artist in that case. But in a case like this, where like it's a stupid comedy manga with jokes that can be like lolicon joke, right? It takes a totally different like aspect when you know that the author is actually someone who was actually into it in real life. So then it becomes disgusting, and then for me, yeah, like I can't separate the art from the artist in this case. That's how I look at it, at least.
Crop up regarding sexual assault or pedophiles, like way to self-report. The fact that the manga is also so geared...
But then again, someone is going to use an example like this to just put everybody in the same basket, right? Everyone who likes loli anime characters, manga or doujin, is self-reporting, is what some people say, despite the fact that that's not how it works. I mean, but an example like this obviously makes it that some people will use this as a as fodder, right? But yeah, obviously this is a bad case, yeah. I remember like Toriko was really popular for a long time. When I first got into anime in the early 2010, I think there was an anime of it. And yeah, it was pretty damn popular. And I'm surprised that, again, this thing happened so long before.
To children and is about children also makes this much worse in my opinion. Like the case with Watsuki, I take no joy in talking about any of this, and it will be the last time I refer to it in much detail throughout this history series, but I feel like it's important information to convey, and in this instance it did lead to the direct cancellation or suspension of a work within Shonen Jump. Thankfully, after this, we can move on to something much, much more exciting that I'm sure many of you have been waiting for a long time.
There's going to be One Piece, but then someone's going to bring up, but do you know that Oda is actually friend with the author of Kenshin? And so Oda is actually a terrible person. And the video. Let's go!
And finally, after multiple years of making these videos and me making 24 videos in total on the magazine, we reach a currently running series within it, One Piece by Eiichiro Oda. It's honestly surreal getting to this point, now knowing the majority of manga that predated One Piece.
Yeah, this is why this series has been awesome to watch, all that I've learned now from all those videos, leading up to, I mean, first when we got up to like something like Dragon Ball, and now One Piece, it's kind of crazy, yeah. It's kind of crazy. Everything that built on top of each other to get to this point.
Entire history of the magazine, how things built up and likely inspired its existence. It's also so hard to imagine a world without this series, and for the foreseeable future and for the next few years of my life, I'll be reading and talking about it regularly because it's not going away anytime soon, with it currently, as of writing, having 1,164 chapters. I think that's already wrong as of me speaking there.
I'm definitely behind myself. Like, I read and watched, I watched the anime up to the middle of Wano, or read the manga up to the middle of Wano, and now it's been some years that I haven't kept up, actually. Some years ago I really had the realization that I just ate reading weekly manga, even though, a lot of the classic are released like that. I just prefer, like, binging manga, right? And with One Piece, with how dense it is and how slow it moves, it's even worse, right? So I've actually, stopped a couple years ago, and I've been wanting to catch up ever since, but I just haven't done it yet. I don't know if I want to catch up with the anime, or the manga. Very likely the manga, but yeah. Otherwise, what can I say about One Piece? I mean, I said before, but it was a friend at school that introduced me to anime. When I was young, like flipping the channel in 2009-10, I had seen anime on TV, but I thought it was kid stuff. I wasn't interested or anything. But then a friend at school who I respected and trusted his opinion told me to watch. It was probably One Piece, and around 2010 or so, I watched it on TV, even though I started probably like in the middle of a later arc or something. I can't even tell you what it was, I can't remember. And then obviously I got into more anime that were on TV at the time, like Bleach, Dragon Ball, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, Fairy Tail, and I think that's most of the one, yeah. But yeah, One Piece was a very big deal for me. Life was pretty terrible. I was bullied at school. My home situation was insanely terrible, and I don't even want to get into it. And I was definitely thinking about offing myself quite a bit, despite only being like 12 or something, very young, right? But one of the things that was already kind of like keeping me alive is that I really enjoyed video game, and they were one of the escape. But then when I got into anime, and especially One Piece, yeah, like I've said before, and some might think it's like a bit of an exaggeration, but it really isn't. One Piece saved my life. As I was so into it, and I wanted to see more of it and where the story would go, that often when I would have those dark thoughts, I would literally think, I can't die because I want to see more of it and I want to continue the story. Obviously, anyone who's been into this kind of mindset of wanting to kill yourself but trying to find something to hold on, you might also have some kind of stupid little thing like this. The point isn't really that about One Piece, it's more about like having something that, give you a reason to like not do it. And for a while, yeah, for a year there, every time things were hard, I would literally like go into my head and think, I have to take this so I can, continue One Piece. And then it was more than One Piece eventually, it was also Bleach, which, I became a big fan. But yeah, I was a massive fan. I watched all that they aired on TV, which was until just before 2 years later, like the time skip. And then I got onto the internet and I was able to catch up. At the time, I think it was up to, just before Dressrosa, maybe? Yeah, so I absolutely love it, even though personally, I think, One Piece is definitely like cut in a very obvious way, right? Like everything up to the 2-year time skip, I absolutely love. I might have been a bit mixed when I was younger, but like Thriller Bark, for example, but yeah, I think everything before that is just so freaking good. And then I won't lie, everything since 2 years later, I've still enjoyed a lot of it, and there's still a lot of greatness, but I definitely didn't enjoy it as much, right? Like, I think there's a lot of great elements in Fishman Island, Dressrosa, but I just never managed to enjoy it as much as the, stuff 2 years before, yeah. And yeah, that's my story. I could talk a lot more about One Piece, of course,
Yes, and will be even more wrong by the time this video is out. And so, for once, I don't have an accurate chapter or volume count. This series is ongoing. It has over 1,000 chapters and over 100 volumes. Fear not though, as today we'll only be covering what debuted in 1997, which includes its beginning in Romance Dawn and the majority of Orange Town, so we'll dip slightly into 1998's chapters just to keep things more digestible as I go through things arc by arc. Before we delve into the series proper though, I want to try to illustrate the lead up to One Piece, as the 90s were Oda's incubation ground. While we've been covering all this history about Shonen Jump, Oda would submit his first one-shot in 1990, Right Wanted, which would win several awards. He would then go on to do assistant work on several manga we've covered, like Sui's and Police Gang, Kappa Man, and Rurouni Kenshin. 1996 would then see 2 versions of
that explain why he's friend with the guy.
Romance Dawn be published. One Piece's one-shot.
I had actually a long time ago bought this, there was a French edition of this, original, I guess, One Piece ID, Bleu Nami, yeah.
Precursor, with one of these being published within Jump itself in 1996, and then of course we reach issue 34 of 1997 that sees one.
So yeah, thinking about it, Oda just kind of like went pretty fast, right? Sure, he had a lot of experience as an assistant, which got his drawing skills, but then yeah, like 2 small one-shot and then starts the biggest series of all time.
Piece debut. There was no axed manga by Oda, it was a straight
That's
shot
crazy.
to One Piece, working under others as an assistant, making plenty of one-shots, and according to Oda's first editor, Takanori Asada, in a 2018 interview for TBS Radio, the series was even rejected 3 times by higher-ups before getting the go-ahead for serialization. Despite this pushback, the series came out and was an immediate hit. 11 issues after its debut, One Piece would take the cover again with chapter 12 in 1997, and then again for issue 50 of the year, even getting lead color pages in the very next issue of Jump 2. A series is never pushed like this unless it's absurdly popular from the very beginning. So if you ever wondered, yes, One Piece was a hit from its very start.
What a surprise.
And I think from reading its very first chapter...
And yet you'll have people constantly shit on the early arc and say that, stuff isn't great until Arlong Park or something, which is, everybody's entitled to their opinion, but it's always something that just boils my blood. I understand not everybody likes the same thing, but I find it absolutely insane, to say that and how do people not enjoy all the stuff leading up to Arlong Park. I mean, sure, it's not as serious and, as grandiose as Arlong Park, but seriously, there's so much greatness before that. Yeah.
It's easy to see why.
Fight
One
me.
Piece begins on a small island, giving us a glimpse of its protagonist Luffy daydreaming about being a pirate like his idol Shanks. And through the course of the chapter, we see him eat the Gum Gum fruit, introducing us to One Piece's wacky power system that's nothing short of intriguing. The Gum Gum fruit in particular is very flexible too, not just in its actual powers, which are great for visually establishing action and comedy scenes, but through what it might represent as well. Luffy can stretch, he's malleable, there's a lot of potential in this ability which I think is reflective of the series and its main character, as well as tone. It really feels like the world is your oyster at the beginning of the series, and spoilers, even now almost 3 decades later, the manga is still surrounded by this grand sense of adventure and mystery. Romance Dawn sets up the board well. In chapter 1 we learn about pirates, devil fruits, monstrous creatures, bounties, and the vague goal of the One Piece. Luffy also takes center stage, initially being a bratty kid, but it's through his admiration of Shanks, a figure the series makes effortlessly charismatic, that I think the readers can easily connect to him. Perhaps not on a deep level, but straight away I feel Luffy learns a lesson about standing up for others, especially for your friends, and Shanks' sacrifice and later gift of his hat make a big impression on readers too. It's such a solid first chapter because it sets up a lot of ideas for the future and makes you excited about its world while also giving you enough reason to care about its main character. Continuing on, 1997 sees Luffy inspire and help Kobe fight Alvida, and together at Shelltown, they take out the deadly Captain Morgan by rescuing the pirate hunter Roronoa Zoro. This portion of Romance Dawn builds up the world more and shows us that we won't just be fighting other pirate crews, but marines too, and more importantly, good and bad people can be found anywhere. Pirates can exhibit kindness sometimes, and on the flip side, Marines can take advantage of townsfolk through being corrupt. A nice intro to the social and political commentary One Piece will interweave throughout its story. Luffy tends to flip everything on its head in his simple pursuit towards his goal, and his straightforward innocent nature is infectious. It's quite charming when he comes up to Zoro to ask him to join.
Man, I'm almost tearing up, seriously. Just thinking about how much I love this freaking series. I'm not I'm not the biggest fan, like some people might be who've rewatched it or reread it many times. I mean, I've actually never read the manga. I used to watch the anime, and then I started reading the manga from Dressrosa, but I didn't go back to read it from the beginning, which is something I absolutely want to do one day, with how good Oda's art is. But again, yeah. I always think, I want to reread it or rewatch it, because it's already been freaking years, obviously, that last time I rewatched it, which was probably 10 years ago at least, since it's so bloody long, right? And that's the thing, right? It's so fucking long that, it's hard to convince myself to actually do it. Yeah. I think everybody is looking forward to the Wit Studio re-adaptation of One Piece. Maybe that'll be my way to re-experience it.
His crew, even though Zoro is literally a pirate hunter. Barriers are broken through their fight against the Marines though, by their equal desire to be generally good people and the best at whatever they do, be it being a pirate or the best swordsman in the world. The chemistry between these two is a lot of fun as well, and while the duo adventure they have between them doesn't last very long, the banter they do share between Shelltown and the next arc is something I enjoyed immensely.
You moron! What the hell's going on now?
On the subject of the next arc, Orange Town introduces us to Nami, a future crew member and thief, as well as Buggy and his crew, the first antagonist with a devil fruit power, which is pretty much the opposite of Luffy's Gum Gum fruit. Oda's creativity is on full display with these two. They aren't typical powers you'd see from most series. There's a focus on being fun visually through them, which makes the series a joy to read. The best part
like seriously, like so many manga, you know, they reuse the same thing, right? Like, you know, I just have a power up that's a glow, you know, I have armor, I have fire, water power, you know, all the stuff that's overused. And One Piece starts right away with stuff that, you know, I don't know if I would say no one has ever done, but is so insanely different from like all of the other like manga, right away.
This arc though is its focus on the idea of treasure, which comes in all sorts of different forms, not just the physical shiny gold variety. Shanks' straw hat is referred to as Luffy's treasure multiple times here. It's the symbol of the friendship and connection to his mentor figure, as well as it representing the promise they share together. Through this, Luffy is able to empathize with other characters in this arc. Choo-Choo and Boodle,
the dark stuff always makes me cry.
Dog and the mayor of Orange Town, who are protecting the things they themselves treasure. The focus on these two.
That might be like one of the moments. I mean, again, for me, I didn't have the experience of watching it in the order, right? As I said, when I first watched it, it was airing on TV, so I'm sure it wasn't from the first episode that I watched it. But, like, I think if there's one moment when you watch or read in order that gets me early on, beyond all the other awesome elements, is this one, right? Like, this is the first moment for me that was, like, big emotion for the early story. This whole little arc about the dog protecting his dead master's store, and, you know, like, that part was already, like, you know, just what sells me the most on the emotional side of the series.
And how much they care about the town, the pet store, and the people who live there is treated in a very heartfelt way, which I think is the first major instance, aside from Chapter 1, where One Piece shows its trump card. The series' ability to instill an emotional reaction in the reader is unfathomably strong. It's able to so cleanly convey why you should care about these small minor side characters, why what they treasure matters, and then you get to see how they fight for them, and it's nothing short of liberating when Luffy beats back the people who are antagonizing them, bolstering his character in the process. This arc exhibits heart, it builds the world, and it also offers us a few classic shonen fights too, with Luffy fighting Richie and Moji, the lion tamer, and Zoro fighting Kabaji the acrobat. Both are just solid fun. But the fight against Buggy grounds itself in the treasure theme by providing an insight into his prior meetings with Shanks. Also, Oda used Sly Dog, showing us characters we won't see until like a decade from now.
Which again, it's something that's so undiscussed, and I just don't understand that that's even possible. Like again, this was his first serialized manga. You know, he had 2 one-shots before that, and yet, you know, I'm sure like not 100% of everything that happens in One Piece was actually planned, but stuff like this definitely was, right? And so it's insane to think about, right? I mean, you had no idea this freaking manga would actually like go on for decades, that it would actually be popular enough to go for a long time, and yet it seems like he had like an outline and a vision for so many like foreshadowing things for such a long time. People talk about it all the time, but it's still like baffling to me, especially like early on like this again, like when he had just started and, you know, he couldn't be sure how long he would be able to do all this. I mean, when it starts laying foreshadowing in like later arc, you know, at this point it's probably like so popular that, you know, it's not as crazy, right? To think that he would be able to keep doing this for a long time and so it will pay off. But yeah, just crazy to me. Just crazy.
One Piece loves to do this, by the way. It will hide little details that will become relevant years and years in the future. Comedy is also at the forefront of this fight with Buggy, which makes sense since he is a clown, but this goes for all of One Piece really. Its ability to juggle serious heartfelt moments with its comedy is a feat that it should be acknowledged for. After reading these 20-odd chapters, I ended up feeling content emotionally, but also happy due to laughing at all of its jokes. I'm so glad I'm reading One Piece again, and we have so much more of this to come in future videos. We're not quite done.
dude has really like managed to give himself a reason to do it, right, by doing this series of video. Yeah, you know, for me it's always like, yeah, again, like it's so freaking long, it's like I want to rewatch or reread it again, but you know, it's hard to find like the motivation when, you know, the time I would spend doing it, I could watch so many other like work or read so many other work that I'm interested in, right?
No, as there's a lot to bring up when it comes to supplemental media outside of the One Piece manga. It's ballooned into several other avenues, like a still ongoing anime that debuted in 1999, a live-action TV show awaiting its second season.
Yeah, this one I'm not very interested in. People seem to like it, but every time I've seen just screenshot of it, I just feel like I'm just looking at cosplay, right? I mean, you know, I do believe in don't judge a book by its cover, but I really have a hard time feeling like watching it. Maybe one day I'll try it, but every time I've seen some stuff about it so far, I just feel very like uninterested.
A second supposed anime, tons of films, games.
They've actually announced, I mean, it's gonna be a weird adaptation, like 1 hour episode of something, and they're releasing a batch of episodes every couple months or something.
Merch, trading cards. It's also gradually on its way to becoming the most sold comic in the world, becoming synonymous with its own medium. It's what you think of when manga is brought up, and especially when you think Shonen Jump, you're likely to think One Piece or of Luffy's face. Luffy and One Piece at this point are the poster boy of the magazine and have been for a good long while. Honestly, it feels like fate when you consider that for the longest time, Jump's logo has been a pirate. Of course, one of its biggest series ever would be about pirates too. Before we wrap up though, we actually have quite a bit more to discuss adjacent to One Piece. I thought it would be interesting to look at the issue One Piece actually did.
Okay, I need to take a break before we continue. I really need to go to the bathroom. Coming back. Okay, sorry for the wait. So yeah, let's finish 97.
Debuted in, since I do have a replica copy. This is one reprinted for the magazine's 50th anniversary a few years back, and I apologize in advance for my likely poor filming, because I'm not very good at this and I'm only using my little phone camera, but I'll try to capture some cool features about this issue, and my hope is it might help ground you in the magazine at the time, since I'm sure many people want to know exactly what the magazine was like when One Piece started. So opening it up, you actually have this fold-out poster for Eyes featuring Iori, like she's an actual idol, something I find a bit interesting, since I think Jump's contemporaries would do similar things, but for real idols. It's a fun relic of the past where ecchi manga still had a bunch of sway. We then have chapter 1 of One Piece with a few pages in color. The spread in particular looks great in real life. After this, we actually have some adverts too, showing off some of the coolest new stuff you could pick up in 1997 in Japan, like the PlayStation 1, the Panasonic Shockwave, and this CD player. The next few pages also showcase an ad for Morinaga Haichu, and then the PS1 again with Everybody's Golf. One thing you may notice about the next few pages of One Piece 2 are it's printed in this bichrome format, with a bunch of tone brought out to this orange ink. If you've ever bought the physical version of JoJo, you'll notice it there too. This is something the magazine used to do to give some series a bit of a boost in quality. It's especially noticeable when a series gets to debut, gets lead color pages, or color pages generally, I think. Though shortly after this, I think it was mostly discontinued in 1998 and relegated to being used in bonus pages or advertisements after that. And before I forget about it, we also have the Shonen Jump questionnaire, something you're meant to fill out and send back to Shueisha, detailing how you feel about the issue, including a section where you list your 3 favorite series of any given week. These surveys are apparently a major force in letting editorial decide what goes and stays, and it's a statistic we're not privy to my knowledge, so many people don't tend to talk about them.
I was gonna say, like, I've always wondered about this, because I've always heard about it, people like vote for the top 3, but yeah, okay, so we don't actually know what they do with those votes.
In between manga, you'll also get a variety of pages, adverts, probably interviews of fun things with different authors, which I unfortunately don't know much about since I can't read Japanese. This Digimon page did catch my eye though, which would coincide with the original release of Digimon, the Virtual Pets, since they debuted in June of 1997 as well. It's a shame we never got a Digimon manga in Jump, though I guess we did get Yu-Gi-Oh! For where other manga were at the time, Rurouni Kenshin would hit chapter 155 in the very early stages of the Jinshu arc. JoJo has this great color page featuring Jono and Mista, one of the few color pages of Part 5's run. On the reverse, there's an advert for some 1-point lessons painted yourself JoJo miniatures, which don't look great to be honest, but might be a fun project. The chapter itself showcases some of the later fight against Gachao and White Album 2, which is one of my favorite fights of the part. Next, there's this double-page spread showing us all the one-shots from the 1997 Shonen Jump Readers' Cup one-shot competition, which I'll talk about a bit later in this video. We also have Chapter 2 of Takeshi, which I did enjoy. I think it's one of the better chapters of the series, which I did read. Chapter 52 of Hoshin Engi is here too, where we're about a quarter of the way through the entire series. The 3rd chapter of Joker is here, and it looks super cool. Eyes is in its early chapters. Kochikame is here too, advertising some toys. And this chapter seems pretty chill, honestly. It looks like Ryotsu is going on a bit of a break or something. Wild Half is at its halfway point at this point, with this cute little dog boy. Haramuya 2 Boy is in this edgy biker arc, which feels very out of place within the magazine, especially flicking through it here. Hell Teacher Nube feels especially Hideshi Hino inspired this week. There's some fun Tetris-y looking stuff going on too. Tenten has a baseball chapter, and then is that my goat Hiroshi Motomiya with a Salaryman Kintaro game advertisement? Yeah, I'm still not shutting up about the grandpappy of the magazine. I'm really glad he keeps popping up now and again. There's an ad for sunscreen here too, I think. Pretty random, but I guess kids do need to put on sunscreen, that's a good idea.
Sure.
Midori is in some of its later chapters, and it's cool to see the art here as it's so much more detailed and action-focused than the beginning. Do I even want to know what's happening in Makuhari? Probably not. Yu-Gi-Oh! On the other hand is the chapter where Joey goes on a TV game show. This is one I remember seeing when I was much younger and thought it was weird they weren't playing Duel Monsters at the time, so fond memories for me there. The rest of the mag is then series by authors who wouldn't really return. After these series would end, Majoko Vivian, Majima, Wrestling with Momoko, and then finally we close out the magazine with Captain Tsubasa World Youth, which is actually wrapping up its final match as it would end in just 3 more chapters.
I do wonder, they usually edit the magazine, like do the least popular series at the end, but if Tsubasa is there, I guess not.
I'm sure there's some cool other stuff I've glossed over or missed here and there. It's really nice flicking through these old issues of Jump though. There's something special about holding the magazine in your hands and seeing where each of the manga are physically slotted in. I really hope you got something out of this little section, and I'm sure someone somewhere on YouTube has a video going through the full thing in nicer quality than I have. If I have time, I'll try to find a video and link it in the description somewhere. But yep, that was the magazine and what it was like when One Piece debuted. It would be really cool if I did this before, honestly, or if I could do this for every single video, having at least one Jump issue to show off, but for now this will be a little treat to celebrate such a monumental manga debuting. I hope you look forward to more One Piece though, as we'll
I mean, I guess I'll do like the others, right? I'll probably skip his talk about One Piece every time, even though, you know, I'm definitely here for the nostalgia, but again, I know about it, so I might as well skip to the stuff we don't know about.
Return to it in the next video when we cover Shonen Jump in 1998 and the Syrup Village arc. For now though, we have a few more new debuts that came out in this year to look at.
Nostalgia.
Cool Rental Bodyguard would last 19 chapters and 3 volumes by Takeshi Konomi and would be a bit of a battle manga with a bodyguard focus, as the title suggests, something that's become a bit of its own subgenre over time. In Cool, people can hire bodyguards such as the ones at coffee shop Jam, and they come in various varieties like power or speed types, but one of those types is called the Tricky type. These are oddball bodyguards but come at a reduced cost. Cool is one of these bodyguards, who is someone who only talks through pre-recorded lines using a tape recorder, though he shouts his signature catchphrase, "cool," whenever he's about to do something cool, presumably. He also has the absurd ability to predict anything, like what anyone he meets says, hence the tape recorder. But this makes him great in fights too, as he can guess exactly what his foes will do. While this series wasn't long lasting, it would eventually get a spin-off lasting 2 volumes called Lady Cool, a luxury the author could afford, as Takeshi Konomi is an author we'll see again very soon, being the creator of Prince of Tennis. Kirin the Last Unicorn would last 20 chapters and 3 volumes by Ken Yagami, and it would follow Kirin Indo, a middle schooler who has been sickly since birth. But due to ingesting a unicorn horn through powder, it's made him healthy enough to live his life day by day. Years later, he's then visited by a so-called unicorn missing his corn named Comet, and when the two of them come together, it activates their latent unicorn powers. Thus, the two get involved in all sorts of adventures involving their powers and others who are also anthropomorphic mythical beasts. The manga initially juggled drama as its main element, with some ecchi and gag on the side, but as it progressed, much like Yagami's other Jump series, Hisoka Returns, it melded in battle elements too, with the different mythical beasts. While this seemed better constructed for battle, it seemed Kirin bounced around too much with its developments, and it wasn't able to hold an audience for long, leading to its cancellation. For something a bit different, Bastard would actually return this year after being relegated to Jump's seasonal special issues since the late 80s. Its return would see it be serialized sporadically for the remainder of the decade, with it even getting a cover in 1997, though come the turn of the millennium it would move to Ultra Jump after it had been established. If you'd like to know more about Bastard, I'd recommend going back to the
Yeah.
1988
We saw that
video,
one.
or just reading the manga since it's very good. Still, I thought I'd bring it up this development as it's one of the few neat little things that happened within the year. After Kawa, the final manga to debut in 1997 would be Meriote Goto Seijiro, lasting 95 chapters and 10 volumes by Hajime Kazu. This is an odd one, following the student council president of Merio High School, a massive complex of 12 buildings housing over 5,000 students, where the student council rules above all, including teachers. Seijiro Goto is the president, often nicknamed the Emperor due to his power over the school, and he lords over it violently, which the manga doesn't shy away from. Seijiro is an interesting character. He's intelligent, domineering, but brash, always involving himself in fights, and on the surface, from what I've seen, his violence seems excessive. He comes across as a villain, but deep down he does care about the students and the school. It just takes someone strong to lord over so many students. Someone has to keep everything moving smoothly. Perhaps the idea is that someone has to be the villain. It featured the general goings on of the school, bullying, different groups fighting, and it even had its own 4 heavenly kings. And Seijiro would often challenge them, as well as students in the student council, to complete impossible tasks for his amusement. There's a grittiness to Meriote Goto Seijiro. Hajime Kazu's art adds to this as well. Something about it feels very frigid. It's the way his characters have piercing eyes, his line work is sharp, and his design
I'm not saying it's bad or anything, but preference in our style, I guess.
are angular. This coupled with the main character make this come across as something a lot harsher than I'd expect from Jump. It had to have clicked though, since it remained in the magazine for some time. The rest of the decade pretty much, with it achieving a certain cult classic status in Japan. To finish off the year, let's head back to Italy.
Jojo. L'espace Jojo as always. More Jojo. A lot of Jojo. When he speaks about Thus Spoke Kishibirohan. I guess let's go to the roster talk.
Now that we've run through everything new in 1997, let's reevaluate the magazine at the beginning and end of the year to see how things changed. I think the year saw it evolve considerably. We're still technically in a bit of a lull after Jump's fall in 1995, but this year saw the magazine piece itself back together in some major ways. To start out the year, we have some current heavy hitters in Hoshinengi, Yu-Gi-Oh! And Rurouni Kenshin, Midori Makibao, Helde Jinube,
Things are looking up again.
Old Guard still going strong with Kojikame, Roku Tanashi Blues, JoJo, and Hallelujah 2 Boy. For gag manga, we also have Sexy Commando, Makuhari and Lucky Man. Majima and Wild Half would act as other solid long runners, as would Captain Tsubasa World Youth Force Sports. Level E would also serialize intermittently throughout the year too. We're then left with Majoko Vivian, which lasted a decent while, and then B Takuto as well as Kusanagi Ayoi for some current duds. Throughout the year, B Takuto, Kusanagi Ayoi and Vivian would end, but also so would a number of large bigger hits. Level E would end its short but spread out run this year. Sexy Commando, Makuhari and Lucky Man would end in 1997, seeing Jump lose the majority of its gag series all at once. And to top it all off, Captain Tsubasa and the super long running boxing delinquent series Roku Tanashi Blues would come to a close after over 400 chapters. This left a lot of room to be filled in 1997, especially for any gag or sports series, but of course, the biggest thing to debut would be neither. One Piece, an adventure-centered manga, would join the magazine and become its frontrunner almost immediately, which of course it still is to this day in late 2025. It's surreal that I finally get to include it in the roster section and get used to it too, because like Kochikame, it's going to be around for a long time. Bastard would take the spot of Level E, being a bit of a special case, only being serialized on occasion. For gag series, Sekimatsu leader Den Takeshi and Tenten would be welcome new additions that would last a considerable amount of time. Ice would finally bring a romance ecchi work back to the magazine and act as another considerable hit. Kawa would see Toriyama return briefly for some spooky fun, and Meriote Goto Seijiro would be an interesting curveball work that would stick around for a couple of years. This leaves the only real duds of 1997 to be Cool Rental Bodyguard and Kirin the Last Unicorn. This overall was a year of big series ending, yet the magazine might be better off based on its new debuts. Even if it was just One Piece debuting,
I mean, yeah, just one episode would be great.
Probably would have said this, but there's a handful of other successful manga that dropped this year too, but there's only really missing some sports series representation. There's still room for some improvement, and Kawa being a short series wouldn't last forever, so let's see if 1998 can continue this upward trend for Jump. And a slight spoiler, 1998 is a really fun year full of some insane debuts, and I look forward to covering it. So if you enjoyed this video, please stick around, subscribe, as I will be covering it sooner rather than later. As a disclaimer though, it might take me a while to get that video out.
I guess I'll pause here. They're already out, obviously. The 98 and 99 videos are out. Okay. Well, I guess we'll leave it at this one for today. Good stuff. I really enjoyed, this couple years coverage. Very interesting. Now we know that, yeah, like mid-90s was a bit of a rough patch until One Piece started. And it's not just One Piece, I mean, like next year Hunter, next year Naruto, and I'm sure in between there's a bunch more big work that I'm not thinking. So yeah, things are going great again for Shonen Jump, as I guess it basically enters a new age. I mean, it's gonna be the age of, the big three, but I guess big three is always like a term that feels like it's kind of missing out on a lot of actually what's going on, because there's much more than just, those going on. So yeah, we're really entering like a different era, and stuff is good and interesting. But yeah, unfortunately I think next stream will have catched up, since we only have 2 more episodes from this series, and obviously Trenton Art has been doing this series for a couple of years, so of course whenever they release a new episode I think I'll check it out, but it might take a long time. I hope they stick with it. I'd love for them to keep covering everything to the modern day. I think that'd be super interesting, yeah. And as I said before, like, this channel might have more topic I'd like to see, so I might watch more other videos in different streams, potentially. But yeah, it's been fun. Reminder that originally my goal was to find like a series of video like this that was covering the entire history of manga, maybe not like as in much detail about every work, but the different magazine, the different big work and stuff like that. I didn't quite find something like this, and I can understand that it would take an absolutely insane person to try to do it. I already find this project kind of insane. It's only about one magazine, so yeah. But in the end, this was great to watch, yeah. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed. Check out Trenton Art and the videos. Tomorrow I'm doing an otaku reaction stream. Come watch if you're interested. Like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you guys next time. See you. ExoticBankai.